Chapter 1325. After that, Noah chatted with Haruhi Hatake for a while and fed him a peeled apple. When Haruhi Hatake was tired, Noah took care of the girl and laid her down before walking out of the room. Just as he walked out of the room, Jiyuki, who had a pointy hat on her shoulder, walked over from the other end of the corridor. Seeing Noah come out of Haruhi's room, Jiyuki quickened her pace and came in front of Noah. "How is Haruhi's condition? Can you say that she's fine?" Noah bitterly smiled. "That girl is infected with the Black Death. If it's dragged on for too long, she will die." As one of the most terrifying plagues in human history, the Black Death was still feared even now. It was a synonym for the Grim Reaper. After all, the Black Death was contagious. Because of the outbreak of the Black Death, Mandela even directly ordered that the surroundings of Haruhi's room be completely isolated, forbidding anyone from Salamandra to freely enter or leave. Only the members of No Name were allowed to pass. Under such circumstances, the only ones who could take care of Haruhi were the members of No Name. "I already asked Letitia to stay behind and take care of Haruhi." Noah could only say so. "So for the time being we can be at ease." "Is it only temporary?" Jiyuki worriedly asked. "Could it be that even you don't have a way to cure Haruhi's illness?" "No way." Noah directly surrendered. "If it's an injury, no matter how serious it is, I have a way to heal Haruhi in a short period of time. Even if she loses an arm or a leg, I have a way to heal her. But when it comes to illness, I really can't do anything." Noah's collection in the Gate of Babylon mainly came from two worlds. One was the world of the shaped moon. The other was the world of the game. The collection in the M-shaped moon world was mainly prepared by Gaia and Alea. There were all kinds of legendary items that could exist in the form of weapons and tools. There were even gold, silver, and treasures. There was also an unlimited supply of consumables. Unfortunately, there were no medical props in this room. No matter what, curing a disease required a specific dose of medicine. No matter how far science had come, there had never been a medicine that could cure all diseases. Otherwise, there would be no point for the rest of the medicines to exist. Under such circumstances, Gaia and Alea had no way of preparing medicine for Noah to treat his illness. After all, with Tongtong's self-control, he couldn't possibly go out of his way to get some cold medicine and stuff it into Noah's treasure trove just because of a small cold, right? Needless to say, the items in the game were even more valuable. At the very least, Noah had heard of a weakened status in the game and a poisoned status in the game, but he had never heard of a sick status in the game. Naturally, none of the items in the game could be used to recover his condition. If Noah had a way to cure Haruhi, there were only two ways. The first was to use the shaman incarnation to give Haruhi the power of protection, increasing his resistance to the disease and eliminating the Black Death. The second was to simply let Haruhi die of the disease, and then use a resurrection item to revive him. Of these two methods, the first one could only be used after Haruhi died, so there was no point in using it now. The second one was to use the shaman incarnation to give Haruhi the power of protection, which could only be done through mouth to mouth. If he mentioned this to Jiu Yuanfei, he would probably be beaten to death by this conservative woman from the Showa era. Jiu Yuanfei, who didn't know what Noah was thinking, could only sigh and reveal a firm expression. "So you're saying that if I want to save Haruhi, I have to defeat the Demon King controlling the Black Death?" "Well, that's how it is," Noah said half-heartedly. "However, that's my mission. Milady, you just have to think about how to deal with the others." "Your mission?" Jiu Yuanfei was confused. "How is it your mission? You might not necessarily encounter that Demon King called Pest, right? It must be known that in this game, regardless of whether it was the host or the participants, it was forbidden to investigate who was attacking the arena or defending the arena before and after the start of the game. In other words, Noah was not allowed to send people to investigate who would be defending which arena on Pest's side. Pest was also not allowed to send people to investigate who would be attacking which arena on Noah's side. Everything was done randomly. If Noah wanted to fight against Pest, he would have to choose the fighting ring that Pest was in charge of guarding. The probability of this was only 1 in 4. It was very hard to say what the result would be. Noah would end up fighting against Pest. If that was the case, it wouldn't be Noah's mission, right? You don't have to worry about that. Noah shrugged. Then he looked at Jiu Yuanfei. You, on the other hand, will you be fine? Amen. Jiu Yuanfei raised her brows and said arrogantly. You think I'll have a problem? Had it been before, not to mention pest, Jiu Yuanfei would not even be able to deal with demons like Vazel, Lading and Strom. A demon who had the merit of causing the death of 130 children was much more powerful than a first-rate existence like Jard. In the past, Jiu Yuanfei did not have enough understanding of her own grace, and could only place her simulated godhead in another person's body, so that those with a lower level of spirit would submit to her. Jiu Yuanfei would not be able to defeat those demons. But now Jiu Yuanfei clearly understood what her own grace was. As long as she provided Jiu Yuanfei with sufficient grace, with Jiu Yuanfei's exceptional ability, she would become extremely terrifying. Ignoring everything else, Black Rabbit had once said that if Jiu Yuanfei was provided with 3 or 4 relatively powerful grace, then with Jiu Yuanfei's ability, it might even be possible for her to increase her grace to 4 digits. Unfortunately, powerful grace was not something that could be obtained just because one wanted to. Not everyone could be like Noah, who had the backing of 2 restraints and a treasure trove of mythical-level treasures. It was precisely because of this that Noah was not as confident as Jiu Yuanfei. Indeed, your grace ability is against the rules. As long as you have sufficient grace to exhaust, even Black Rabbit would have to worry if she would fall into your trap, right? Noah reminded. However, that's only if you have the grace. If you use up all the grace in your hands before you achieve victory, then you will definitely lose. Jiu Yuanfei was immediately speechless. Indeed, this was a weakness that Jiu Yuanfei had to pay attention to. Ancient flying birds' blessings were all very ordinary blessings. After being bestowed with the simulated godhead and increasing the power of the spirit, the lifespan of the grace would be greatly reduced, and they would become consumables. At that time, once Jiu Yuanfei used up all her grace, even people like Jard might not be able to defeat her. Furthermore, Jiu Yuanfei's physical ability was only at the level of an ordinary person. As soon as an enemy got close to her, she would lose her ability to fight in one hit. Unless you're bestowed with the simulated godhead and increasing the power of the spirit, you'll be able to withstand the powerful grace and protect yourself. Noah looked at Jiu Yuanfei seriously. I can help you with this, but it depends on whether you're willing to do it. Jiu Yuanfei fell silent. After a while, Jiu Yuanfei lifted her head and seemed to have made a decision. I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to rely on others to pave the way for me. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for me to leave everything in the original world and come to this world. Jiu Yuanfei extended her hand and touched the elf with the pointy hat on her shoulder. Don't worry, I'll be able to get the powerful grace. However, I'll have to ask this child to help me. Her? Noah looked at the elf with the pointy hat in a daze. The elf with the pointy hat, who was standing on Jiu Yuanfei's shoulder, seemed to be dancing happily. Blessing of power, blessing of power. Seeing this, Noah, who did not understand, could only choose to trust Jiu Yuanfei. Just like that, the time for the battle with the Demon King was getting closer and closer. Chapter 13:26. Most of the artworks displayed at the fire dragon's birth ceremony were placed in a large empty space. It was a tunnel, and there were squares dug out on both sides of the wall. They looked like exhibition cabinets, and many artworks were placed in the large empty space. In this large empty space, there were many beautiful lanterns, candlesticks, and stained glass. There were also some specially made gifts that were used in daily life and even in battle. They had great artistic value. It was said that there were also some ancient gifts that were held by famous Shura gods since the beginning of Hakata's construction. No matter how one looked at it, they were the rarest of the rare existences. However, such a rare gift naturally couldn't be displayed in a large empty space at any time and place. Therefore, after the Demon King's attack, those gifts were protected by Salamandra and moved out of this large empty space. Because of this, Lading, who had been enjoying the beautiful lanterns, candlesticks, and stained glass in the large empty space in the center of the exhibition hall, spoke with some regret. It's so beautiful. Even these ordinary things can be made so beautiful. I really want to see the artworks that existed since the beginning of Hakata's construction. It's such a pity that Salamandra moved them away. Don't tell me you want to occupy these worthless things too? Witsy said helplessly as he carried the flute that was as thick as a stick. Don't forget, we're not planning to rob these useless things. We're planning to rob talents that can strengthen the community. You're right, Ladding said unhappily. But it's a woman's nature to be moved by beautiful things. Witsy, don't you understand that? Unfortunately, I'm not interested in women's interests. Witsy scratched his head. If I have the time, I'd rather take revenge on that kid who punched me. What? Do men only know how to fight and kill? You're so annoying. Ladding was like a little girl who loved to look beautiful. She put on an innocent and naive attitude. Can't you be a little more ambitious? I mean, we're demons. Witsy sighed. As demons, aren't we supposed to pursue killing? That's why I don't like that old demon style. Ladding threw her gaze to the side as if she was throwing a tantrum. That's what Master thinks too, right? Pest, who was wearing a dress with black and white spots on it, sat on a rock. She did not even look in Ladding's direction as she spoke with a monotonous voice and an expressionless face. I'm not interested. Sigh. Lating lowered her head as if she had received a blow. I thought that since we're both women, Master would have the same opinion as me. Before that, I still have things that I must do. Pest spoke in a somewhat cold and indifferent manner. I don't have time to pay attention to these boring things. Hearing Pest's words, Will and Ladding immediately looked to one another. Then, they both turned their gazes to Pest. I say, Master, Will asked tentatively, are you worried about tomorrow's game of grace? Hearing those words, Pest finally turned her head around and looked at Will. Did you think that I would lose my confidence as the Demon King because of a mere human? Pest's tone was still as calm and cold as ever. However, Will and Ladding were able to keenly sense that Pest's heart was filled with displeasure. Furthermore, Pest's words had exposed her inner thoughts. Undoubtedly, neither Will nor Ladding mentioned a human. They had only mentioned tomorrow's game. Thus, Will and Ladding both understood what was going on. Exactly who was the human Pest was referring to. That guy is truly infuriating, Ladding raised her eyebrows. Looking at how confident he is of us, who does he think he is? Truth be told, that guy is indeed not simple. Will calmly analyzed. Not only did he crack our game so easily, but he also took the initiative of the entire situation into his own hands. He even made Master change the game on a large scale. Just this degree of control over the game is already quite impressive. What's so amazing about him? Isn't it just that he knows how to use his brain a bit? Ladding was unwilling to admit defeat. A man like him who only knows how to talk big will definitely not be able to do anything on the battlefield. That would best be the case. Will started to frown. However, that is not realistic. No matter what, when the game had just started, that guy and that arrogant brat had caught us off guard. We didn't even notice them approaching us. Ladding was immediately speechless. Then she began to refuse to admit defeat. Even if we cannot defeat them, with Master here, there will be no problem at all. In this game of blessings, Pest, Will, Ladding, and Shoutram's group of 4 were each required to defend an arena, and allow the other 4 competitors to attack them. Even if Will, Ladding, and Strom were to lose, as long as Pest was able to defend her stage, it would be considered Grim Grimoire Home's victory. For Grim Grimoire Home in this game, they still held the advantage. Besides, Master did not immediately recall the Black Death virus that was spread out. Right now, some people with weaker immune systems must have fallen, right? Ladding snickered in a somewhat mischievous manner. If that man were to fall as well, he would truly deserve it. Unfortunately, he also said that he would not be affected by the Black Death virus. Will poured cold water on Ladding's words. Don't be so stubborn. Although the situation seems to be in our favor, that's because we have Master, the Demon King with a 5-digit number. Other than Master, do you think you and I can guarantee that we'll be able to defend the ring? The smile on Ladding's face slowly disappeared. She sank into silence. It must be said that this game had already gone out of control. Not only were the puzzles of the game solved, the content of the game was also greatly changed. Even the enemies that they thought would be fine after sealing White Yiksha suddenly had a bunch of powerful helpers. 16 knights, who sent Will flying with a single punch right from the start. Ju Yuan Flying Bird, who had been hiding a trump card when he was attacked by rats. Haruai Hikari, who was able to use the favor of phantom beasts and talk to animals. Lastly, the unfathomable Noah, who solved the puzzles in an extremely short amount of time and exposed the true identities of everyone, completely changing the content of the game. Frankly speaking, Will and Latting were no longer like they were in the beginning. They no longer thought that they could effortlessly win this game. Undoubtedly, the Demon King had used his authority as the organizer to force others to participate in this game of favor. For the Demon King's side, this was an absolute advantage. However, the outcome had turned out like this. Who wouldn't be worried at all? At the very least, Will and Latting were unable to do so. Right at that moment, Pest suddenly spoke. I will defeat that man called Noah. Will and Latting were startled at the same time. Master, Latting cautiously said. The opponent is randomly selected in the game. Even if that man appears, the chances of him facing you is only 1 in 4, right? However, faced with this question, Pest merely replied with a calm expression. Although that is the case, I have a feeling that my opponent will definitely be that man. After saying those words, Pest turned her gaze to Will and Latting. As for the two of you, if you don't have the confidence to win, I will be the one to give you confidence. After saying those words, a black gust of wind blew around Pest. She disappeared within the black gust of wind. The whistling black gust of wind suddenly undulated and appeared before Will. Pest, who appeared from the black gust of wind, was floating in midair. She extended a hand and placed it on Will's head. Incarnation of Will River. I will now bestow you with the divine spark and allow you to become a true demon god. Chapter 1327. When the sky regained its brightness once again, the gentle sunlight that descended from the sky caused the huge reflection of the boundary wall to expand continuously on the ground. A dense and heavy atmosphere spread throughout the entire 4 million outer sect area. 3 days ago, this place was very lively because of the fire dragon's birth ceremony, held by the eastern and northern districts. But now, 3 days later, it was as if this place had lost its vitality. There was not a single person to be seen. But that was only natural. After encountering the disaster of the box court, as an ordinary citizen, it was very difficult for them to continue living leisurely here. Under the arrangement of Salamandra, the ordinary citizens had already gone to seek refuge. The only ones left were those who belonged to the various communities that were bound by the rules of the gift game, and were unable to leave the designated activity area. And those communities were all gathered in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Only 5 people came out of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Noah, 16 knights, Ancient Bird, Sandora, and as the referee, Black Rabbit, who had to personally witness the outcome of this gift game and preside over the overall situation until the end. Other than these 5 people, everyone else stayed in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. It wasn't because the others didn't want to move with Noah and the others. But when Sandora announced the 4 contestants in front of everyone, other than Black Rabbit, who was the referee, everyone else was bound by the contract and couldn't leave the operation headquarters. Well, that's to be expected, right? Reverse 16 Knights tugged at his collar a little roughly as he curled his lips into a smile. If we don't restrict the actions of others, then when we fight with the organizers, others can easily interfere from the side. That doesn't comply with the 3rd restriction of the contestants. When the game restarts, only 4 contestants can appear. Yes. Black Rabbit nodded heavily, his expression was unprecedentedly serious. The game will restart soon. Black Rabbit's rabbit ears have already received the command from the box court's central hub. Everyone, please start choosing the arena you want to attack. After saying that, Black Rabbit spread out a map. The map that was spread out was exactly the same as the one that Noah had taken out during the meeting 3 days ago. The only difference was that the locations of the 4 rings were marked with 4 crosses, and they were marked with the symbols of 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Now the members of Grim Gimmel family have taken up the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th ring respectively. Hei-tu raised his head and looked at the crowd. Everyone, please consider carefully which arena number to choose. Once you have chosen, you will not be able to change it. Noah, 16 Knights reverse distant bird, and Shadora exchanged glances. Then I'll choose arena number 1. Reverse 16 Knights forcefully hammered his fist into his palm. His eyes revealed an unprecedented excitement. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Lord Demon King, I hope you can give me enough fun. Then I'll choose the second arena. Jiu Fei Niao did not want to be outdone, and made a declaration. She held the wine-red gift card tightly in her hand. Let me show my brand new strength on this stage. Seeing how Reverse 16 Knights and Distant Bird had decisively decided which arena to take down without any hesitation, Shadora couldn't help but admire them. The reason why they were so decisive was because Reverse 16 Knights and Distant Bird believed that they would win. They didn't think that they would lose. To put it nicely, this straightforwardness was confidence. To put it bluntly, it was arrogance. Regardless of whether it was confidence or arrogance, Reverse 16 Knights and Distant Bird had displayed it in a way that no one would dislike. This made Shadora, who was somewhat nervous and worried, calm down a lot. Under such circumstances, Noah, who had been observing Shadora's performance, smiled and spoke very casually. In that case, I'll choose arena number 3. Understood. Shadora pulled herself together, and said with the most serious expression. Then please give me arena number 4. I swear in the name of the ruler that I won't submit to the Demon King. After Noah's group of 4 had decided on the arena they would attack, the pitch-black contract document in Black Rabbit's hand flashed with light. The following information was written on it. Gift game name, Demon King's Arena No. 1 Arena Raider, Reverse 16 Knights. Raider of Arena number 2, Jiao Fei Niao Arena 3 Raider. Noah Doria Arena 4 Raider. Shadora Turturek. According to the rules of the game, the raider is not allowed to change the target midway. The defender is also not allowed to change the arena they are defending. Respecting the above content, based on the honor, flag, and authority of the organizer, the gift game will be restarted. After confirming the new content on the contract document, Black Rabbit raised the pitch-black contract document in its hand and declared loudly. Then the gift game Demon King's Arena begins now. The heavy atmosphere that permeated the entire world suddenly exploded. Just as Noah and the others were about to head to the arena, Reverse 16 Knights, who accidentally passed by Noah, lowered his voice and left this sentence. I'll let you have the feast this time. If you lose, I won't let you go. Hearing this, Noah was slightly stunned. At this time, Reverse 16 Knights had already turned into a black shadow and rushed out. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Looking at the direction where Reverse 16 Knights disappeared, Noah couldn't help but laugh. I really can't hide from him. East of the outer door area, where arena number 1 was, Reverse 16 Knights, who was mixed with the sound of breaking air, fell from the sky like a cannonball. With a heavy muffled explosion, he landed heavily on the ground. Straightening his body and raising his head, 16 Knights turned his gaze in the direction of the arena. Then he raised his eyebrows and grinned. Huh. So it's you, a third-rate demon? The person who appeared in the arena was Wei Shi. However, in the face of Reverse 16 Knights' provocation, Wei Shi only had a ruthless smile and did not reply. On his body, an almost terrifying aura gradually rose. Sensing the aura, 16 Knights' disdainful expression gradually disappeared as he stared intently at Wei Shi. You seem to have changed, huh? Wei Shi closed his eyes and chuckled. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. Whether I'm different or not, you'll have to experience it for yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Wei Shi lowered his body and raised the thick stick-like flute in his hand. His entire body was like a wild cheetah as he charged out amidst the hurricane that shook the air. Compared to before, his speed was simply incomparable. West of the outer door area, where arena number 2 was, Jiu Yufei, who was slowly and gracefully walking into the arena area, suddenly stopped and looked in front of her. Oh! La Ting twirled the flute in her hand and laughed out loud. I didn't expect to meet you here. I apologize for not greeting you last time at the exhibition venue. Exhibition venue? Jiu Yufei narrowed her eyes and smiled sweetly. So you're the one who manipulated the rats to attack me? That's just a greeting. La Ting smiled leisurely. How is it? Are you satisfied? Satisfied, of course I'm satisfied. Jiu Yufei smiled elegantly and raised the gift card in her hand. So today let me give you a satisfactory return gift. North of the outer door area, where arena number 3 was located. Before Noah arrived at a place where he could see the ring, he could already sense an extremely strong and dangerous power, while hovering in midair. A black wind that seemed to have dyed heaven and earth black kept stirring up like the turbid atmosphere, rushing back and forth. Looking at the gale that completely dyed his field of vision black, Noah's eyes flashed with a gleam. Chapter 1328. Buzz. Like the center of a chaotic storm, pitch-black turbulence swept through the air, turning into a darkness visible to the naked eye. Even the sunlight was blocked out by the black wind. In the center of this darkness, in the center of the chaotic pitch-black storm, Pest's patterned dress fluttered as she floated up and down. Her feet were half a foot off the ground as she gently floated in the air with her eyes closed. It was as if she had fallen asleep. It must be said that the scene of a sleeping petite young girl floating in the center of the violent black wind was exceptionally beautiful. If the wind surrounding Pest wasn't pitch black in color, and the petite young girl's beautiful face didn't have a cold and detached expression, then it would truly be a painting. Even so, the scene of a sleeping petite young girl in the middle of the violent black wind still possessed a sense of beauty that defied morality. If it were those who were not obsessed with the strange, but only obsessed with the beautiful, perhaps they might even involuntarily approach it, right? However, if they were to approach Pest without any preparation, they would most definitely die miserably. After all, the berserk black wind engulfing Pest was not merely an ominous color. As the demon king who controlled the Black Death, the favor Pest used was not merely to control the ominous colored wind. The pitch-black wind was completely composed of a virus called the Black Death. It was different from those chronic viruses that lay dormant in the human body and needed a period of time to settle down before they would become active. Right now, the black wind surrounding Pest was filled with the Black Death virus that could cause one's death upon contact. However, when faced with such a terrifying violent wind, Noah, who was flying in midair, actually slowly descended without the slightest hesitation. He was devoured by the violent black wind. His clothes immediately fluttered wildly under the violent wind. The deadly viruses contained within the violent wind seemed to be all-pervasive. They entered Noah's body through his skin and breathing and entered Noah's body. However, the moment those viruses entered Noah's body, they disappeared without a trace. In this sort of situation, Noah appeared as if he had entered the center of a violent storm. He slowly descended onto the stage and confronted Pest. Only at this moment did Pest slowly open her eyes. Seeing that Noah was not affected in the slightest by the Black Death's wind of death, Pest's expression became extremely ice-cold. There was even a trace of anger. Although she was the demon king who controlled the Black Death, Pest did not have the slightest favorable impression of the Black Death virus. As for why, it was because before she was reduced to the appearance of a demon king, when she was still a human, Pest had died from the corrosion of the Black Death virus. It was not only her. Pest had personally witnessed all the living beings that died from the Black Death. She had witnessed it to the point of numbness. Now that she saw a person who did not waver in the slightest even under the crazy corrosion of the Black Death virus before her, the first emotion in her heart was anger. Why did this person did not die from the Black Death virus? Why did she die from the Black Death virus? Why did everyone died from the Black Death virus? Why was he the only one who was unaffected by the Black Death? For a moment, all sorts of complicated thoughts appeared in Pest's mind. This caused the gaze with which Pest looked at Noah to become more and more angry. I knew it. You would definitely appear before me. There's nothing I can do about it. My luck has always been very good, replied Noah indifferently. In a random selection that can only rely on luck, since I strongly hope to meet you, then even the world will help me, right? This was the reason why Noah was so certain that he would be able to face Pest. With the world's protection skill, Noah would always obtain the best result when it came to matters where one could only rely on luck. Since Noah wished to face Pest, The world's protection skill would not disappoint Noah. It was precisely because Inverse 16 Knights knew exactly how good Noah's luck was that he said those words. Although Inverse 16 Knights still did not know about the existence of the world's protection skill, he had already guessed that Noah must have a method to increase his luck. Otherwise, Noah would not have been able to defeat Luos repeatedly in the gambling games where the winning rate was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Pest, who did not know about this, continued to float her petite body as she looked at Noah. That's fine too. Let me be the one to kill you. Pest's purpose in attacking the fire dragon birth ceremony was to subdue the talents here. However, in terms of talents, who could be more outstanding than White Yiksha? Therefore, Pest wanted to obtain White Yiksha the most. If Pest had thought of obtaining Noah in the beginning, then now, this thought had completely disappeared. After Noah shamelessly declared that he was definitely not a match for Noah, Noah's expression changed. After Noah was able to ignore the effects of the Black Death virus and stand before her in a carefree manner. Because of that, Pest decided that she would kill this man who had caused her great displeasure. Although I really want to turn you into my toy. Pest raised her hand that was covered by her long sleeve and pointed at Noah. A malicious smile appeared on her face. Unfortunately, I've changed my mind. Is that so? Noah glanced at Pest. Since you've decided to change your mind, then I'll carry on your original idea. Once I've completely defeated you and made you kneel before me as the Demon King, and become a servant of my community, I'll make you into a decent toy. The expression in Pest's eyes grew colder and colder. Then come and give it a try. After saying those words, an astonishing black wind exploded and spread out in all directions. At the same time, the entire town underwent an intense change. Rumble. At this moment, the entire town that was illuminated by the morning sun began to tremble violently. Wong. Pitch-black beams of light shot into the sky from every corner of the violently trembling town, shooting straight into the air. When those beams of light reached the sky, the entire sky was gradually dyed black. The palaces carved out from the realm walls were engulfed by the darkness. The enormous realm walls that extended all the way to the sky gradually disappeared without a trace. One building after another appeared to be reclaimed by the earth. First, they sank into the ground. Then, one building after another rose up from the ground and replaced them. A large number of spires turned into wooden buildings. The chandeliers that created the atmosphere of the northern district disappeared. They were replaced by pink buildings. Thus, not long after, the entire town turned into an unfamiliar environment. It was replaced by a Renaissance-style street scene. Everyone in the headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony saw this scene through the windows and entered a state of chaos. Jiu Yufei and Shadora, who were in the middle of a battle, were also shocked by this sudden change. 16 Knights, who was in a confrontation with Wei Shi, glanced around and forced a smile as he said, "That's right. It's finally activated?" Hamel's Grimoire. Mandela once said that the community named Grim Grimoire Hamel was once led by a powerful demon king who could summon demons from as many as 200 grimoires. Will and Latine were demons related to the Pied Piper of Hamel. Since that was the case, what kind of book of sorcery did Will and Latting summon demons from? Was there a need to doubt it? But I didn't expect to summon the entire town of Hamel. 16 Knights twisted his numb arm and stared at Wei Shi, who was standing opposite him. You guys are really something. It's useless to talk about this now, little brat. Wei Shi carried the flute on his shoulder and laughed sinisterly. Not only did I get the divinity, but I also got the buff from Hamel's grimoire. I'm not the same as I was 3 days ago. If you don't fight with your life on the line, you will die. 16 Knights twitched the corner of his mouth, and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. Don't be so arrogant. In the next moment, the two of them disappeared on the spot. The fist and the stick collided with each other. Dong. The shocking impact shook the air. Chapter 1329. In the Fire Dragon birth ceremony's main hall, the entire space was filled with a tense atmosphere. Everyone had their mouths tightly shut, not daring to make a sound as they stared at the 4 screens floating in the air. 4 images were displayed on those 4 screens. The 4 images were the 4 groups of people fighting in the 4 arenas. As for the gift that allowed these 4 images to be displayed, it was provided by Thousand Eyes. Perhaps it was because White Yiksha, the strongest person in the hierarchy, felt embarrassed that he was unable to participate in such an important battle. That was why Thousand Eyes decided to provide some help in this regard. Thus, even in the Fire Dragon birth ceremony's main hall, everyone could clearly see the situation of the 4 stages. Originally, the people here were without a doubt paying the most attention to the situation of the Demon King Pest stage. However, right now everyone was attracted by the battle in the other stage. That was a battle that could only be described as violent and frightening. Every time they collided, they would give rise to astonishing shockwaves. Every time they attacked, they would give rise to a roaring atmosphere. Every time they charged, they would give rise to frightening turbulence. Every time they shouted, they would give rise to rioting noises. Reverse 16 Knights and will seem to be performing a battle that could only appear in legends. They were like demonic gods that could destroy the heavens and exterminate the earth, attacking and defending again and again. Their fists that were powerful enough to break mountains and rivers destroyed buildings one after another. Their flutes that were powerful enough to shatter the earth sent rocks flying one after another. The stage that was used as the battlefield had long been completely destroyed. However, there was no rule that limited the battlefield to the stage. Reverse 16 Knights and Will attacked, defended, and dodged. They had long moved from their original location toward the east to the center of the town. Everywhere they passed, the buildings burst apart like paper. The earth seemed to have been smashed by meteorites. Rubble and crushed stones were lifted up, piling up into ruins. The battle situation could be said to be world-shaking. Seeing this scene, everyone present held their breaths. Mandela stared at 16 Knights, who had an arrogant and unruly smile on his face as he repeatedly swung his fists that could shatter mountains and rivers. He smashed the half-destroyed buildings that were coming at him because of the impact before he charged at Wei Che. Mandela subconsciously tightened his grip on the hilt of the long saber at his waist. His hand was already covered in sweat. That guy, is he really human? Not only Mandela, but even Black Rabbit and Run, who had never seen 16 Knights go all out in battle, were shocked. Because Noah's brilliance was too bright, Black Rabbit and Ren's impression of 16 Knights' reversal was that although his strength was strong, his talents as an advisor and military counselor were superior to that of a combatant. So much so that even the Black Rabbit was forgotten. On the first day in the courtyard, Noah and 16 Knights had fought hand-to-hand combat to the point where both sides were injured. As for Wei Che, although he only obtained the spiritual lattice with the death of 130 children as a merit, he was estimated to be a 6-digit demon in the courtyard. However, at this moment, Wei Che's power had skyrocketed to an astonishing level. That kind of power had already shocked Black Rabbit, who had 4 types of gift armaments that simulated the level of divine lattice. Why? Ren asked with some surprise and uncertainty. Why did Wei Che become so strong? Hearing this, Black Rabbit stared at the screen and said in a deep voice, Wei Che has already obtained the divine lattice. What? Ren gasped in shock. Wei Che actually obtained the divine lattice? This was not a joke. One must know that the divine lattice was a gift that could raise the level of a species to the highest level, allowing the spiritual lattice to rise to the highest level. Letitia, who was once a demon lord, only lost her divine lattice, and her power dropped to less than 1/10 of the level. Even if some ordinary beasts obtained the divine lattice, they would instantly rise to the level of beast god or demon god. And Wei Che originally had a 6-digit power level. After obtaining the divine lattice and becoming a demon god, it was not surprising that his power rose to such a level. But where did Wei Che's divine lattice come from? Ren's expression became uncertain. Was it given by another god? Or the demon lord of the Black Death originally had the divine lattice? Generally, divine lattices could only be given by gods. According to the level of the god, the number of divine lattices that could be given by the other party was also limited. And apart from the gods giving, if one wanted to obtain the divine lattice, they could only start from other ways. For example, in the case of Letitia's divine lattice being deprived, it was not surprising that the divine lattice was used by others. That kind of divine lattice could be taken from others, And it could also be bought or traded from others to obtain the divine lattice that had not been used yet. If it was bought, it would be at a sky-high price. After all, it was different from the materialization type of gift. The gift held by an individual was a part of the soul, and it could only be taken away if the other party was willing. Thus, one could imagine how rare the divine lattice was. After all, no one would give away a gift of the level of the divine lattice, unless they had no other choice, right? Of course, there were strong and weak divine lattices, and there were naturally strong and weak divine lattices. It was said that the divine lattice given by the strongest species born as gods could instantly increase the strength of the weakest being from 7 digits to 4 digits. The divine lattice given by the weaker gods could at most increase the strength by 1 or 2 digits. Even so, to be able to obtain the divine lattice was already a rebirth. He can still fight to this extent against a demon with a divine lattice? Mandela exclaimed in admiration. It seems that the decision to let him fight was right. Mandela turned his gaze to the screen showing Shadora's arena, and his expression became grave. TSK, I didn't expect to be tricked. Taking a closer look, Shadora was fighting a huge terracotta soldier named Strum. However, there wasn't only one Strum fighting Shadora. There were at least 10 of them. That Strum isn't a demon at all. He's just a puppet. Black Rabbit said in a serious tone. Wes is the incarnation of Wes River that was summoned from the real, the Pied Piper of Hamel. Latine is the rat catcher that was summoned from the fairy tale, the Pied Piper of Hamel. Pess was able to activate Hamel's grimoire, so she must have some sort of connection with the Pied Piper of Hamel. Only Strum is a complete fake. That was why there were so many Strum puppets when there should only be one guardian. They were just puppets. Just like how Noah was able to bring Letitia and Aster into the battlefield as his own gifts, Strum was a pure puppet that was also a gift made by humans. No matter how many puppets were added to the arena, they wouldn't exceed the stipulated limit of 1 person. However, it was precisely because of this that the puppets were incinerated by Shadora's flames one after another. It's just a bunch of puppets. With Shadora's power, she can easily take care of them, Rin said with relief. It would appear that the 4th arena should be an abandoned chess piece. The true trump cards are the Demon King Pest and the Godhead Prestige. Yeah. Hei-Tu nodded heavily and shifted his gaze to another screen. As for Latting, it's about time for her to leave. Just as Black Rabbit finished speaking, the crowd who had noticed the battle between Jiu Fei Niao and La Ting started to cheer in surprise. Amidst the roar that shook the atmosphere, a red steel fist rubbed against the air and heavily smashed into the ground. Bang! Amidst the heaven-shaking muffled explosion, the ground was directly shattered, stirring up shockwaves that spread out in all directions. Ah! La Ting let out a miserable scream amidst the shockwaves. Like a kite with a broken string, she smashed into the ground and rolled a few times before coming to a stop. Wah! La Ting raised her head with great difficulty. Blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. She stared at the scene before her with an expression of disbelief. There was an enormous silhouette that blotted out the sky. Chapter 1330. Being. Accompanied by an accentuated shout, the huge figure flashed with a red light, revealing its entire appearance in front of La Ting. The huge red body was painted and designed with the sun as the foundation, and the whole body was meticulously decorated, showing an overwhelming sense of existence. The huge figure that appeared in front of La Ting was a giant made of red steel. The main color of his body was red with some golden patterns. It was probably more than 10 meters tall. In front of him was an abstract painting that looked like the sun. His entire body was covered in thick steel armor. As for his arm, it was twice as thick as a human's arm. The red steel giant let out an earth-shattering roar. Its square-shaped head was decorated with an eye-like ornament, flashing a red light like a warning light. It stared closely at La Ting. At this moment, Lading felt a chill crawl up her spine. Driven by such a chill, La Ting squeezed out a voice with great difficulty. What is that? This question was answered leisurely by an elegant voice. Allah, you mean Dean? Jiu Yuanfei stood on the shoulder of the steel giant named Dean, and looked down at La Ting. Then, She reached out her hand and touched her own shoulder. This is a gift from this child's community. Hearing this, La Ting turned to look at Jiu Fei Niao's shoulder and widened her eyes. Gift, gift, the elf in the pointy hat happily called out in a sing-song voice. Community, gift to flying bird. That giant was given by that little guy? La Ting said in disbelief. How is this possible? It wasn't that La Ting didn't believe it, but it was really difficult to give the impression that the two were related. On the other hand, there was a tiny sprite that could jump casually on the shoulder of a distant flying bird, smaller than a palm. On the other side was a steel giant that was at least 10 meters tall, and had the ability to shatter the ground with a single punch. The impact alone was enough to blow Lei Jing away. How could people link the two together? To this, Jiu Fei Niao nodded as if it was natural. Even ants can move objects that are several times bigger than themselves. Don't underestimate this child. Jiu Fei Niao smiled sweetly. Although this child's community is made up of a group of elves just like it, this Dion is their greatest masterpiece. I passed the bestowment game set up by them and obtained Dion. All for the sake of defeating you. Don't talk big. La Ting shouted angrily and fearfully. That Iron Man, see if I don't make it mine. With that, La Ting's body that was in pain and she struggled. She struggled as she struggled body. She struggled body and struggled. She put the flute in her mouth and started playing. The beautiful flute's beautiful voice, and the entire space. By a calm of La Ting's. The demon, the demon, the demon, the demon, demon, the demon, the demon, the demon, 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 the demon. In Grimm's fairy tales, the reason why the flute player was called the rat catcher was that he could control rats and even children with his magic flute, causing 130 children to go missing in Grimm's fairy tales. Previously, in the exhibition hall, La Ting used the sound of the flute to control the rats and attack the birds. In other words, La Ting's flute had the ability to control people's minds. Although the steel giant named Dean was a gift from the ancient flying bird, as long as it had a consciousness, La Ting could control it with the sound of her flute, no matter how weak that consciousness was. Understanding this, Ju Yuan flying bird's face turned cold. I won't let you succeed. The moment the words left his mouth, the red steel giant roared at the sky once more. Dean. With a roar, the steel giant named Dean suddenly threw a punch in La Ting's direction. The next moment, a scene that shocked Lei Jing happened. Just as Dean's giant arm was thrown out, the arm seemed to fly out and suddenly elongated. It was like a huge stick, withstanding the whistling atmosphere, and landed on La Ting's body. Bang! Along with a heavy muffled sound this time, La Ting did not even have time to cry out. Her entire body was directly sent flying by the terrifying force of the punch. She landed heavily on the ground, smashing a huge hole in the ground. Pht! La Ting could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The terrifying power of the punch almost shattered all the bones in La Ting's body in an instant. This was not a metaphor. Dean's punch could easily shatter a building. This was because it was caused by the terrifying weight of the steel on his body. Shocking weight. It also had the gift of being able to stretch and shrink freely. La Ting had only heard of one type of steel. Divine. Precious. Iron. Divine precious iron. If that was the case, many people might not know what kind of steel it was. However, if a weapon was mentioned, many people would know what divine precious iron was. Jingu Bang. It appeared in the famous masterpiece Journey to the West. It was held by the main character of Journey to the West, the great sage equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. It could stretch and shrink freely, and it was the sea-stabilizing needle that weighed 13,500 pounds. This incomparably heavy sea-stabilizing divine needle was made of divine precious metal. In other words, the steel that made up Dean's body was the same as the famous sea-stabilizing needle. Don't call me despicable. Ju Yuan Fei Niao pursed her lips and smiled. Not knowing the origin of the enemy is also a kind of loss of self-control. Hearing this, La Ting's eyes flickered slightly, and then she smiled helplessly. That's true. With a sincere smile, La Ting's body emitted a faint light. Finally, she turned into light particles and gradually dissipated. From Grimm's fairy tale, The Pied Piper of Hamel, the demon incarnate of the Ratcatcher, exits. The second arena was successfully conquered. Win. We won. We really won. The second arena was successfully conquered. So powerful. That woman, is she really no name? She actually has such a gift, she's too powerful. In the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, many people let out pleasantly surprised cheers. This made Black Rabbit and Run, who were sitting in the front row, extremely excited. Miss Flying Bird is too powerful, Black Rabbit exclaimed excitedly. Where did she get such a powerful gift? That's right. Run nodded. With the puppet made of divine precious iron as a gift, coupled with Miss Flying Bird's mighty light, the power is boundless. One must know that the famous Jingu Bang, which was also made of divine precious iron, was a genuine divine persona weapon. Although Ju Yuan Fei Niao's Dean was not bestowed with divine persona, since it could use divine precious iron as a material, it was equivalent to meeting the requirements to become a divine persona grade gift. Furthermore, Ju Yuan Fei Niao bestowed a simulated divine persona. Even if it was not as good as the Jingu Bang, it was still much stronger than a normal gift. Such a gift could definitely afford Ju Yuan Fei Niao's ability, and would not become a consumable item. With it, Ju Yuan Fei Niao had the qualifications to become the main force of a community in a true sense. Although her physical ability is only that of an ordinary person, it is indeed amazing to have such a talent. Mandela's heart was also a little shocked. Whether it's that kid or this girl, why does No Name have so many outstanding talents? At this time, Mandela remembered something. Compared to 16 Knights and Ju Yuan Fei Niao, in No Name, there was an existence that was even more illegal. Thinking of this, Mandela turned his head and looked at the screen of the third ring. However, everything that entered his eyes made Mandela cry out involuntarily. How is this possible? Mandela's cry that lost his composure suddenly attracted the attention of everyone present. Therefore, when everyone present turned their eyes to the screen of the third ring, the scene that appeared in front of everyone's eyes made everyone present sluggish, including Black Rabbit, including Ren, including Letitia, who came to the corner of the hall with the help of Haruai Hybe. Chapter 1331. Who? With the entire arena as the center, the whistling pitch-black storm continued to engulf the entire space, causing the atmosphere to tremble. It was a very frightening sight. From a distance, it appeared as if there was an enormous pitch-black vortex enveloping the entire space. As the vortex spun frantically, it emitted an aura of death. It was likely that no one would be willing to walk into such a vortex that would lead directly to death. However, at the center of such a vortex of death where one could die upon contact, traces of dazzling golden light could be faintly seen. That was the luster flowing on the silver chains that stretched out from the wave-like golden ripples that were crisscrossing in the space, with wedges of different shapes at the front end, forming an encirclement. These silver chains, which had dazzling golden lights flowing on their surfaces, extended out from the golden ripples that resembled water waves. At this moment, they seemed to have formed an intricate network that was placed in the center of the pitch-black storm vortex. At the center of the intertwining chains in the air was a person who was hanging there. His limbs were wrapped in chains that glowed with a dazzling golden light. She was like a delicate butterfly that had fallen into a spider's web and was about to lose her life. Just like that, Pest's entire body was entangled by those chains. She was hanging at the center of the intertwining chains. Traces of paleness appeared on her delicate and beautiful face. Her breathing had also become hurried. He looked like Jesus who had been nailed to the cross. He exuded a sense of grief, but at the same time, he exuded a holy aura. Merely, as someone who was tightly bound by the chains, Pest did not feel any grief in her heart, nor did she feel any sense of sacredness. The only thing she felt was endless disbelief. With great difficulty, Pest raised her head and looked forward. She stared intently at the figure floating not far away from her and squeezed out a voice. Impossible. Impossible. It had been almost 3 minutes since he was bound by the crisscrossing chains. During those 3 minutes, Pest had unleashed all of her abilities and squeezed out all of her strength. Yet she was unable to break free from the shackles around her body. This was impossible. Those were the truest thoughts in Pest's heart. If one were to ask why, how could there be chains capable of binding her in this world? It wasn't that Pest was extremely confident in her strength. Instead, as an existence herself, Pest was not an existence that could be casually bound. That's because you're not a demon summoned from the Piper of Hamel, by obtaining the spirit core through the death of 130 children. Am I right? As if he could see through all the thoughts in Pest's heart, Noah, who was floating not far away from Pest, looked at Pest, who was tightly bound by chains and hung in midair, and spoke in a manner as if he had seen through all the thoughts in Pest's heart. From the very beginning, I had been suspicious. Since only Wessie is the true incarnation of the Wessie River from the 13th centuries, the Piper of Hamel, then you should be the same as Ladding, a demon summoned from the 15th centuries, the Piper of Hamel. Right? After all, the Black Death was one of the most serious plagues in human history that spread throughout the Little Ice Age after the 14th century. This plague would cause sepsis. Black spots would appear all over the victims' bodies, and they would gradually die. As for the clowns that appeared in Grimm's The Piper of Hamel, they wore spotted clothing. They were also capable of manipulating the cause of the Black Death, the existence of rats. It was precisely because of those 2 points that some scholars believed that the 130 children died from the Black Death. Regardless of whether it was spots or rats, they were all existences closely related to the Black Death. Thus, at the beginning, Noah thought that Pest was the same as Latine, a Black Death demon who was summoned from the Grimm's fairy tale, the Piper of Hamel, which appeared after the 15th century. However, if that is the case, there is a very serious question. That is, the level of spirit brought about by the death of 130 children is simply not strong enough to allow you, Pest, to become a demon king with a 5-digit number. Noah's eyes flickered slightly. Both Wessie and Ladding, who both possessed the death of 130 children, are only at the 6-digit number. They are not even at the peak. As for you, you are able to become a 5-digit number. No matter how I think about it, it is impossible for you to possess the same type of spirit, right? Thinking about it this way, one cannot help but suspect whether or not you possess a spirit that is even more outstanding than the death of 130 children. So outstanding that you can become a demon king with a 5-digit number. Noah looked straight at Pest. For example, all the people who died from the Black Death from the 14th century to the 17th century, when it was the most prevalent. Pest immediately bit down on her lips. Seeing this, Noah took a glance at Pest. From 1348 to 1352, the Black Death eliminated a third of Europe's population, a total of about 25 million people. In the 300 years after that, the Black Death continued to visit Europe and Asia's cities and towns unceasingly, threatening the people who managed to survive the calamity. It left behind an astonishing death rate in many cities and towns. The highest death rate was as high as 1,500 people a day. In the 18th century, the death rate reached as high as 80 million people. Thus, Demon King of the Black Death, you are not some demon who possesses the death of 130 children achievement. Instead, you are a god who possesses the death of 80 million achievement. That's right. Pest was not a demon. Instead, she was a god. She was the Demon King who obtained the death of 80 million achievement, and was bestowed with the position of the god of death in Hamel's Pied Piper. Her real name was Black Death Spot God. In Hamel's legacy, the clown who wore patterned clothing and the rat who was the source of the Black Death's infection, both of them possessed a common nickname during the era when the Black Death was prevalent. That is, they are the beings capable of bringing about death, the god of death. Noah looked at Pest with a smile that was not a smile. With the death of 80 million achievement, as long as Hamel's grimoire is used as a medium to summon you, you will definitely be able to smoothly ascend to the position of the god of death in Hamel's legacy, and become a god. Am I right? Pest bit her lips harder and harder. Noah's deduction was completely correct. Pest was not some demon who had transformed from the Black Death. In the beginning, Pest was merely an undead that had lost her life to the Black Death. After becoming an undead, Pest began to wander aimlessly all over the world and gathered the wraiths that had also died to the Black Death. As time passed, She became the leader of a group of undead that had died to the Black Death. As the leader of this group of undead, Pest possessed the proper merit of killing 80 million people. Thus, the Demon King who had once led Grim Gimmel used Hamel's grimoire as a medium to summon Pest to the box. He had Pest ascend to the position of the god of death in Hamel's legacy. In other words, as long as Pest activated Hamel's grimoire, she would become a true god of death. From Black Death Spot Demon King to Black Death Spot God of Death. If you hadn't activated Hamel's grimoire and transformed into the Black Death Spot God of Death, perhaps you might have been able to persist for a while longer, Noah said indifferently. Unfortunately, after becoming a god, you will not be able to break free from this Enkidu. Enkidu? The god-opposing weapon that had once captured the heavenly bull that caused the world to fall into 7 years of famine? Pest's expression immediately changed. Impossible. That bestowed weapon should no longer exist. That's right. It should no longer exist. It was a god-opposing weapon recorded in humanity's oldest epic. It was a weapon used by the hero King Gilgamesh and his only close friend, Enkidu, to capture the heavenly bull. After Enkidu grew weak and died, Gilgamesh was praised as a hero by the later generations. After his life ended in the country he governed, this famous weapon disappeared into the long river of history. Thus, this weapon should no longer exist. Chapter 1332. In the past, when they were in the world of the formless moon, Noah had also told Rin Embin and Artoria about such a thing. In all kinds of myths and legends, those that symbolized the heroic spirits themselves and were limited to the heroic spirits before their death would return to the myths in various ways after the holder passed away. Because of this, treasures like the Avalon that had been passed down from the mythological era until it was discovered by later generations were pitifully few. In fact, there were less than 5 treasures like the Avalon that had been passed down since the mythological era. This rule was also applicable in this box. For example, Perseus, who had been mentioned before. In Greek mythology, Perseus did not rise to the night sky until the end of the myth, after enjoying a peaceful life, and transformed into the constellation named Immortal Constellation. In fact, after the end of this myth, Perseus was summoned to the box without the knowledge of the world. People like Perseus, who had left in various ways in their own myths and legends, would eventually be summoned to the box court. Therefore, there were so many famous Shura gods and Buddhas in myths and legends living in the box. Among these Shura gods and Buddhas, some were born gods, which was one of the strongest species. In order to obtain the corresponding faith, they used various ways to spread their own myths and legends in the world outside the box, so that the world knew about them. There were also those who had completed feats that were comparable to myths and legends in the outside world, and obtained sufficient faith and spiritual attributes that were enough to be promoted to deities. After becoming deities, they would be summoned to the box. Gilgamesh was the latter. As a high-level demigod, when Gilgamesh left in myths and legends, he should have been summoned to the box and become a famous existence at the top of the box. However, just like how Perseus, who was also a demigod, had already died before he was summoned to the box, Gilgamesh, who was waiting for the end of his life in his own mythology, had already died. With the death of Gilgamesh, the divine weapon called Enkidu was also lost. After all, Gilgamesh did not die in the box. Instead, he followed the flow of life to the end and died in the country he ruled. And who knew which world Gilgamesh had once lived in? Where did the famous Enkidu go in this world? That was the reason why Pest felt such disbelief. However, what caused Pest to feel even more disbelief was yet to come. Seeing the expression of disbelief on Pest's face, as she was firmly bound by the heavenly lock and hung in midair, Noah coldly laughed. "You're surprised? Let me show you something even more shocking." With that, Noah extended a hand toward the space beside him. Whang! A golden ripple suddenly fluctuated in the space, and a long spear was spat out. It was a long spear that was dark red in color. There wasn't only one spearhead, but it was like a fork. It was like a parallel line that was divided into 2 parts, forming a fork that stretched out. When the long spear was ejected from the golden ripple, Noah grasped it tightly in his hand and pointed it at Pest. Pest was able to clearly sense it. An ice-cold chill surged out from Pest's soul. Like an electric current that spread throughout her body, it instantly covered her entire body. Pest felt a true threat from that strangely shaped spear. It proved that it was a weapon that could cause enormous harm to even gods. Dark red, the body of the spear is like a fork. It can even kill gods. Pest's beautiful face immediately turned deathly pale. Could it be? Oh, have you managed to guess the true form of this spear? Noah curled his lips and smiled. That's right. A spear with a forked body is an existence that gods cannot ignore. As he said those words, Noah pointed the dark red spear in his hand at Pest. After all, the more famous a god is, the more likely it is for them to be instantly killed if they encounter this spear. The spear of Longinus. Pest shook her head absent-mindedly. Intense turmoil could be seen in her eyes. Impossible, impossible. The spear of Longinus shouldn't exist anymore. If it was said that the Enkidu, that the hero King Gilgamesh possessed was only lost, and could still be found, then the spear of Longinus should really have ceased to exist. As for why, it was because the spear had already broken into 3 sections after stabbing Jesus to death. It was said that the spear of Longinus that had broken into 3 sections had even caused the gods to fight over it in the past. In the end, the 3 sections of the spear had disappeared without a trace. And now, not only was Noah holding this famous god-slaying spear, it was even complete. How could Pest not be astonished by this? Of course, no matter how astonished she was, it would not change the fact that Noah was in possession of the spear. Regardless of whether it was the Enkidu or the spear of Longinus, they were both treasures that worked against divinity. The higher the divinity of the target, the stronger the divinity of the target. The Enkidu was a treasured artifact. The higher the divinity of the target, the greater the damage it would cause to the target. The spear of Longinus was a treasured artifact. Regardless of whether it was a god that was born as the strongest god, a god that obtained the power of faith and ascended, or even an existence like Pest who ascended to the position of a god through great achievements, as long as it was a god, even if the nature of their existence was different, the divinity that was the foundation of a god would definitely exist. As long as one possessed divinity, the higher the divinity, the more powerful these 2 treasures would be. Pest was a god that had only managed to ascend to the position of the death god through some small tricks. But even so, Pest's divinity was still much stronger than that of those higher life forms that were only demigods. Under such circumstances, the Enkidu and spear of Longinus were simply Pest's natural enemies. No. Rather, it should be said that they were the natural enemies of all gods. Unless one possessed a power that surpassed one's own divinity. Otherwise, as long as one was trapped by the Enkidu, one would not be able to break free. As long as one was pierced by the spear of Longinus, one would definitely suffer a terrifying amount of damage. Only now did Pest understand why Noah would declare that she was no match for him. Possessing this sort of cheating bestowment tool, it was simply impossible for an ordinary Azura god to be a match for Noah. Seeing the blood draining from Pest's face, Noah spoke in a pitiful and emotionless manner. Surrender. You will not be able to defeat me. These words caused Pest's heart to tremble. She abruptly raised her head. No. I will never surrender. Like a storm, a frantic black wind burst forth from the bound Pest's body and spread out in all directions. I am the representative of 80 million wraiths on my back. I must make the resentment of all the people who experience the era of death spread throughout the world. A lazy sun that brings hunger and poverty. An existence that is seeking vengeance. Pest shouted loudly. How could I surrender here? As Pest shouted with resentment and madness, the terrifying black wind that resembled wraiths stirred up the entire space. The black wind gathered together and turned into a pitch-black air wave. Like a surging wave, the air wave surged toward Noah. Seeing the enormous pitch-black air wave that blotted out the sky frantically surging toward him, Noah closed his eyes. Then he abruptly opened his eyes. In that case, allow me to bear all of your resentment. After saying those words, Noah abruptly tightened his grip on the spear in his hand. With a sidestep, he pulled the spear from his shoulder behind him. In the next second, Noah ferociously tossed the spear in his hand. Whoosh! The spear immediately turned into a dark red stream of light. It streaked through space and shot straight into the enormous pitch-black air wave surging toward him. The dark red stream of light parted the wave. The dark red stream of light parted the black air wave. In the end, like a flash of light, the light landed on Pest's body. Poochie! With a ripping sound, the spear pierced through the young girl's heart. Chapter 1333. Along with a roar, a terrifying shockwave spread wildly in the open space that had turned into ruins, causing the atmosphere to show a feeling of being distorted. The astonishing shockwave shook in the center of the open space in a ring shape, hitting the two figures in the center of the impact heavily. Immediately, the two culprits who had caused such an impact seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Their bodies were like cannonballs as they were sent flying. His fists, which had been thrown out countless times, were now flowing with traces of pain. Feeling the slight pain, 16 Knights gritted his teeth bitterly. He tried his best to turn around and let his body that was still flying upside down fall to the ground. As a result, 16 Knights' feet were heavily inserted into the ground. Carried by the terrifying force that had not been completely eliminated, he rubbed a few 100 meters long gully on the ground before gradually stabilizing his body. As soon as he stabilized himself, 16 Knights immediately raised his head. His body tensed up as he let out a wild laugh that was filled with satisfaction and battle intent. With a leap he shot forward. On the opposite side, Wei Shi's figure finally stabilized forcibly, but his expression immediately changed. His body suddenly flashed to the side. Just at the moment when Wei Shi's figure flashed away, a fist that tore through the vast sky with a terrifying wind slammed on the ground where he stood before, shattering the entire ground. The shattered ground splashed up pieces of gravel that spread out like bullets, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as they spread to the surrounding space. That was not a metaphor. The gravel that shot violently to the surroundings indeed bounced in all directions at the speed of bullets. If an ordinary person were to be struck by the gravel at such a speed, their entire body would definitely be pierced through. Facing such a group of gravel that shot violently, Wei Shi, who was still retreating, waved the thick flute in his hand down fiercely, while maintaining his figure. With a fierce aura, the flute directly smashed all the gravel that shot violently into powder. However, just at the moment when the flute in Wei Shi's hand was smashed down, a figure that burst out with the speed of the third universe suddenly appeared in front of him. The face of 16 Knights with an insolent smile was imprinted in Wei Shi's eyes. Hey. What's wrong? Is this all you got? Amidst the provocative laughter, 16 Knights' reversal's fist once again smashed towards Wei Shi's chest, bringing with it a terrifying gust of wind. Seeing that 16 Knights continued to attack relentlessly, Wei Shi, who was also not a kind man, had a murderous look in his eyes. Don't be too arrogant. Stinky brat. The flute in his hand had just been waved down, so he couldn't withdraw it at all. Therefore Wei Shi simply didn't dodge. Instead, he spun around and kicked out a fierce gust of wind at 16th Knights who was attacking him. In the next second, amidst two shocking muffled sounds that sounded almost at the same time, punches and kicks containing terrifying power fiercely fell on 16 Knights and Wei Shi. Goo! 16 Knights and Wei Shi suddenly let out a muffled groan at the same time. Their figures once again turned into cannonballs, like arrows released from the bowstring. With a sharp piercing sound, they slammed heavily on the ground. The powerful force caused two crater-like pits to appear in this open space. And if one took a closer look, the entire open space had already been filled with pits. Even the places where there were no pits were occupied by spiderweb-like cracks. As for the surrounding buildings, they had long been turned into ruins. They were either caught in the collision between reverse 16 Knights and Wilzhe and turned into rubble, or struck when reverse 16 Knights and Wilzhe's attack missed and turned into dust. As a result, the entire area around the venue seemed to have been hit by a magnitude 10 earthquake. Only ruins were left, and it was a horrible sight to behold. 16 Knights, who stood up from the pit, spat out a mouthful of blood in his mouth. His palm trembled slightly, and he raised his head and looked forward. Wei Shi, who also stood up from the pit, coughed twice. He looked directly at 16 Knights opposite him with eyes full of fighting spirit and violence, and grinned. You're quite capable, brat. That's my line, third-rate demon. 16 Knights involuntarily showed a satisfied smile. So far, you're the first person who can fight with me face to face except for my little brother. Really, I've only been in the box court for a month, and I've already met 2 opponents who can fight with me. Damn it, why didn't that rabbit summon me earlier? It seems that you're very happy. Wei Shi was speechless. I'm not happy at all, brat. I originally thought that with this power, I could easily deal with an opponent of your level. Who knew that after fighting for so long, I still couldn't take you down? This time my master might be angry. Indeed, your strength has increased to a level that I can't help but be satisfied with. 16 Knights raised his numb hand and looked directly at Wei Shi. After obtaining the divinity, you actually became so strong. Should I say, as expected of the demon who has the merit of killing 130 children? Oh, Wei Shi raised his eyebrows. Can you tell that I've obtained the divinity? Should I say, this is the only possibility I can think of? 16 Knights looked around at the surrounding ruins. The one who activated Hamel's grimoire is that Spotted Lowly, but that Spotted Lowly isn't the demon in Hamel's Pied Piper at all. She's a higher, stronger character. If I'm not wrong, that Demon King should be the representative of the Black Death group that was summoned through Hamel's grimoire. He should be the god of death in Hamel's legacy, right? I see. Wei Shi glanced at 16 Knights. You've already seen through it to this extent? Or rather, I've solved the puzzle to this extent. If I still can't see through it, then I'm really too weak. That little brother should have his suspicions as well. He might have seen through it earlier than me. 16 Knights spread his hands. Thinking about it this way, since that Spotted Lowly is a god, it shouldn't be strange for her to be able to bestow 1 or 2 divinities to her subordinates, right? To be exact, my master is only capable of bestowing 1 divinity. After all, she didn't become a god through proper means. She gave off a half-baked feeling. Wei Shi straightened his back and pointed the flute in his hand at 16 Knights. Even so, that person is still the Black Death Spot Reaper. Now that Hamel's grimoire has been activated, she is a true god. Even though she's only a 5-digit divinity, her strength is still unimaginable to those with the same number of digits. It's impossible for her to be defeated. Now that Pest had become a deity, she would definitely not lose to an existence with the same or lower number of deities as her. There was still a difference between those with the same number of digits. As a god, Pest stood at the apex of the 5-digit divinity. And now that Wei Shi had obtained the divinity, he was also a 5-digit divinity. But unless there were 2 or more divinities, it would be impossible for them to be a match for Pest. The difference between them was that great. After all, gods were existences that surpassed the majority of species. That was the reason why Wei Shi was so confident. However, his confidence was shattered in the very next second. Rumble. The entire Hamiltown started to tremble. It turned into a mirage and gradually disappeared. Seeing that, Wei Shi's expression finally changed. Oh, Hamel's grimoire has lost its effect? 16 Knights laughed loudly. It would appear that the Spotted Lowly who activated Hamel's grimoire has been defeated by Little Brother. Tisk. Wei Shi glared at 16 Knights and roared. Since that's the case, I will kill you and obtain the victory of this game. If you want to dream, you can dream until you're in eternal slumber. 16 Knights shouted. However, it is indeed time to end this, you third-rate demon. After saying those words, the 2 of them leaped up and charged at each other. Fists and flute were waving about for the sake of victory. The outcome of this battle was decided in the very next second. Chapter 1334. Just as the darkness outside completely faded away, the sky regained its light. The sun shone down from the horizon, restoring the entire environment of the town to its original appearance. When the huge boundary wall was restored, all the pitch-black contract documents flashed with a dazzling light. The person holding the pitch-black contract quickly took out the contract that was shining brightly. Almost everyone had the following content in their contract documents. Bestowed game name: Demon King's Arena Battle. Winner of Arena 1. 16 Knights in Reverse. Winner of Arena Number 2. Jiu Yufei Niao Arena 3 Victor. Noah Dole. Winner of Ring 4. Sandra Turderek. According to the rules of the game, the final winner and loser would be announced. The final winner. All participants and organizers from the 399, 9999 Outer Sect and 4000000 Outer Sect's Realm Wall stage on the side of the participant side. Final loser. Organizer Grim Grimoire Hamon. When the contents of the contract appeared, Jiao Yufei and Shadora, who were in different positions, smiled happily. Oha! In the operation headquarters hall of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, earth-shattering cheers resounded through the sky, shaking the entire space. Everyone couldn't help but hug each other. Some cried tears of joy. Some were madly overjoyed. Some people pretended to be calm. Some people rejoiced. Although their expressions were completely different, at this moment, everyone felt heartfelt joy at the Demon King's defeat. At the very least, under such circumstances, the people here did not need to obey the Grim Grimoire Hamon, let alone lose their lives. All in all, the outcome this time was undoubtedly gratifying. After all, when Pest had just started attacking, Noah and the 16 Knights reversal had stopped all of the people from Grim Grimoire Hamon. This continued until Black Rabbit started a discussion. When the game restarted, only Noah, 16 Knights in reverse, Ju Yuan Flying Bird, and Shadora needed to participate. The rest of them stayed in the safe operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. In other words, the Demon King's game of grace this time passed without any losses. It was a miracle that no one had died in the game against the Demon King known as the Calamity. Therefore, the people here could not help but let out such loud cheers. Staying in the corner, Letitia supported Hiroyuki Haruai, who felt his body temperature gradually recede, and his heavy body began to slowly recover. This was a sign that the Black Death planted by Pest was starting to fade away. There was no better proof than this that Noah had defeated Pest. At the front of the hall, Black Rabbit also leaped forward, raising the contract document high and announcing with a smile. Then, I announced that the winner of the gift game Demon King's Arena Battle is everyone present. Oh. Shocking cheers once again resounded throughout the entire hall, causing the ground to tremble slightly. In the corner, Haruai and Letitia looked at each other, and could not help but smile. Ren and Mandela also could not hide their joy and smiled. No one noticed. In another corner of the hall, White Yiksha, who had escaped from the seal, immediately rushed to the scene. When he saw the cheering community, he could not help but smile. He opened the paper fan in his hand, which had the painting of a Valkyrie looking at each other, and covered the lower half of his face. Although I really want to appear in front of everyone and announce the victory as the leader of the hierarchy, I have been sealed from beginning to end, and I really don't have the face to suddenly run out. Therefore, I will leave the matter of announcing the victory to Shadora. With this kind of helpless and gratified smile, Byakuya raised his head and looked at the 4 screens floating in the hall. Finally, his gaze stopped on one of them and narrowed his eyes. However, Enkidu and Longinus, that kid actually still has those things? In the box court, although there were not many gifts that could be useful to the gods, there were still some. For example, the sickle-shaped sword that Luos had that once belonged to the hero Perseus was a gift weapon that could be useful to the gods and astral spirits. However, among the few gifts that could be useful to the gods, Enkidu and Longinus were at the top of the list. The former had long been lost in the outside world with the passing of the hero king Gilgamesh. The latter was broken into 3 parts, which once caused the gods to fight over it, and finally disappeared. In other words, it was a gift that only existed in legends. Now Noah displayed them. Originally, having more than 1,000 types of godhead-level gift weapons is already shocking enough, but among them, there is actually such a legendary item? White Yiksha's curiosity was really piqued. I really want to know where that brat collected all these bestowed weapons. At the same time, on a street, Noah's figure appeared here. Noah, who was walking on this street, stopped in front of a piece of stained glass after a while. Looking at this piece of stained glass, Noah extended his hand, and a wave-like golden ripple suddenly reverberated on the stained glass, covering the entire piece of stained glass. When the wave-like golden ripples disappeared, the stained glass also disappeared from its original position. This is the last piece, right? Noah muttered to himself with some uncertainty. I've already recovered more than 130 pieces of stained glass, so this should be the only number, right? Just as his voice fell, a mocking tone sounded in front of Noah. What? Isn't this a perfect preparation for that spotted lowly? Hearing this voice, Noah turned his head and looked forward. There, 16 knights put one hand in his pocket, and the other hand was hanging limply. He leaned against the door of a building and curled his lips at Noah. Then what about that spotted lowly? Hearing this, Noah shrugged and said very calmly, already killed. Killed? 16 knights raised his eyebrows and said with a smile that was not a smile. You really have the heart to do it? The resentment of 80 million dead souls isn't something that can be easily convinced by a few words and make them surrender obediently, Noah said helplessly as if he had accepted the situation. If we don't completely defeat them, we won't be able to determine the winner, right? That's true. 16 knights spread his hands. However, since you collected Hamel's grimoire, it means that Spotted Lowly should still be able to come back, right? Who knows? Noah said indifferently. According to the rules of the box court, if the Demon King is defeated in the Game of Grace, he must belong to the victorious community. Pest is an undead to begin with. Even if she were to die again, with the power of the box court, they should still be able to summon her back, right? Of course, that was also because Noah was being lenient. After all, having her body pierced by the Longinus spear, a weapon that specifically targeted divinities, Pest, who had transformed into a god, would be annihilated along with her very existence. If he had not been lenient, Pest's soul would have already disappeared without a trace. 16 knights, who didn't know about this, said frivolously. Then, what if the Spotted Lowly is unable to come back? Hearing this, Noah glanced at 16 knights, raised his foot, and directly walked past him, walking forward. Then Noah threw out this sentence. At that time, I'll be the one to resurrect her. After going through so much trouble to fight for so long, it was all for no name to obtain the ownership of the Black Death Spot Demon King. How could he allow Pest to escape so easily? Besides, Noah was still waiting to fulfill his promise and let Pest have a taste of being treated as a toy. Chapter 1335. This time, I've really troubled you guys. In the guest room of Thousand Eyes, Byakuya shyly scratched his face as he thanked the members of No Name sitting around him. Although I made it sound so amazing before, in the end, I didn't help at all. As the leader of the hierarchy, I failed in my duty. Hearing Byakuya's flippant tone, the members of No Name looked at each other and smiled. Looking closely, not only were Noah 16 Knights Reverse, Jiu Yufei, Haruhibuyaki, and Hito present, but even Letitia and Aster, who were dressed as maids, were present. Apart from Aster, who was silently nibbling on snacks, everyone's gazes were focused on Byakuya. Among them, 16 Knights said in a mocking tone, "That's not something you can get away with by saying you failed in your duty. Byakuya, undoubtedly before the game started, this bro reminded you that since the other side knew that you, the strongest leader of the hierarchy, were here, they must have prepared a method to deal with you. You must be careful, right?" I can't refute that. Byakuya looked like he had eaten a durian. His face was full of confusion, but at the same time, he felt a bit emotional. However, since that Black Death Spot Demon King is the representative of the 80 million undead, then there's nothing I can do. The Black Death, which was widespread in the 14th century, took 80 million lives in a few hundred years. The reason why it broke out to such an extent was because the sun had entered a minimum activity period, causing the entire world to be invaded by cold, entering the Little Ice Age. In other words, the cause of the Black Death was the sun. Because of this, Pest said that she had to represent the 80 million undead and take revenge on the lazy sun. This wasn't just something she said. Instead, it was something that was realized through the rules of the game. In other words, as the star spirit of the sun, Byakuya, who controlled the movement of the sun, was sealed at the start of the game because of this reason. Because 80 million people had died in the Black Death, Pest, who had obtained the spirit core, turned the right to represent these vengeful spirits to take revenge against the sun and to the rules of the game. She recreated the history of how the sun's power had once weakened during the Little Ice Age, causing the White Yiksha to be sealed. It was only because he understood this that White Yiksha could not blame Pest. Although it was not direct, White Yiksha could be said to have indirectly caused the tragedy of Pest and 80 million lives lost to the Black Death. Thinking of this, Bayasha sighed slightly, then pulled himself together and smiled at Noah and the others. No matter what, the reason why the game was solved this time was mostly due to no name. According to our initial agreement, the Infernal King's ownership belongs to you, so please don't worry. Hearing this, everyone smiled in relief. Only Noah confirmed with Bayasha. In other words, according to the rules of the box court, we can still summon Pest back, right? That Infernal King was originally an undead spirit. It was just that Hamel's grimoire was used as a medium to summon her to the box court from the end of the era when the Black Death was prevalent. Bayasha gave a definite answer. So, according to the rules of the box court, the defeated Infernal King must belong to you. Relying on the power of the box court, it is not difficult to summon her back. Hearing this, Noah suddenly smiled. In that case, these things that I spent a lot of time collecting will be of use. After saying this, Noah waved his hand. Wave-like golden ripples undulated from the corner of the reception room, causing pieces of stained glass to float up. They overlapped and appeared in the room one after another. This is... Bayasha said in surprise. Hamel's grimoire? That's right. Noah nodded and said to Bayasha. I hope that you can use Hamel's grimoire as a medium to summon Pest back. Oh, using Hamel's grimoire as a medium? Bayasha narrowed his eyes and looked at Noah with a smile that was not a smile. It seems that you are also unwilling to part with that Infernal King's aptitude. Noah shrugged and did not refute, tacitly agreeing. After all, Noah collected Hamel's grimoire because he was unwilling to part with Pest's great aptitude. As the representative of the astonishing achievement of 80 million deaths, Pest definitely had the aptitude to become a deity. However, apart from the strongest innate deities, if the other races wanted to become a deity, apart from obtaining outstanding achievements, they also needed a certain amount of faith. Faith was the foundation of becoming a deity. If one did not have faith, no matter how many achievements they collected, they would not be able to become a deity. Of course, there were many forms of faith. There were many examples of people being revered due to fear and becoming a deity. However, the Black Death was prevalent in the 14th century. At that time, the concentration of faith had already become somewhat thin. Furthermore, the reason for the Black Death's prevalence was because the sun had entered a period of minimal activity. Thus, no one would think that the Black Death's prevalence was based on myths and legends. For example, religious rumors and sayings such as the Black Death was the punishment of the heavens to mankind. This led to the disappearance of the connection between the Black Death's terror and religion, making it impossible for the Black Death to become a religion. Thus, even though Pest possessed the aptitude to become a deity, she was still unable to become a deity. Because of this, the Infernal King who summoned Pest used the spotted death god in Hamel's grimoire as a medium to summon Pest as a deity. If the medium that could provide Pest with a suitable deity's position was lost, then even if Pest was summoned back, she would no longer be a deity. This way, the Infernal King's strength would decrease substantially. From the peak of 5 digits, she would fall to the bottom of 5 digits. She might even fall to 6 digits. If that was the case, it would truly be a pity. What Noah coveted was the power of Pest, a demon king with a 5-digit number. Naturally, he did not wish to see Pest's strength decrease substantially. That was why Noah collected Hamel's grimoire. I hope that Thousand Eyes can slightly modify Hamel's grimoire and use it as a summoning medium for the Black Death Spot Demon King. Noah said to White Yiksha. After all, we are unable to summon demons from over 200 magic tomes like that Demon King. As such, we are unable to use Hamel's magic tomes. If you are willing to assist us in modifying Hamel's magic tomes and have it become Pest's summoning medium again, we are willing to pay you extra. After saying those words, Noah looked at Run. Leader, is this all right? Of course, it's all right. Run immediately reacted and nodded repeatedly. If Thousand Eyes is willing to modify Hamel's grimoire, we can pay you extra. Yes. Black Rabbit also nodded repeatedly. Being able to have a 5-digit deity join us is naturally more than what we wish for. That's how it is. The three problematic children, 16 Knights Reverse, Juyu and Asaka, and Haruai Toshi, spoke at the same time. So hurry up and do it for us. I say. Letitia could not help but speak up. Everyone, this is not the tone you used to ask for help. Forget it, forget it. I'm quite annoyed that I couldn't be of any use as a class controller in this game. Since that's the case, I should at least give you guys a suitable reward for your contributions. Otherwise, as class controllers, I'm really disqualified. White Yiksha laughed as he waved the paper fan in his hand. Don't worry, I have accepted your request. Treat it as an extra reward for all of you. I will not charge you extra. Just wait for a 5-digit deity to join us. Hearing that, everyone smiled in satisfaction. Although Haruai Hiroyuki was expressionless, he still expressed his anger. Without the quality of a host, these people are not good enough. That's true, but other communities also need to live. Knowing that they will lose in a situation where they have to restrain themselves, that is understandable. Letitia magnanimously said this. Anyway, with the strength of Master Noah and all of you, you will definitely be able to welcome a bigger stage. I'm sure that in the near future, there will be a community that is famous and promising to send us an invitation to the game. Right? Yes. Black Rabbit's long rabbit ears suddenly stood up, and he took out an invitation with a face full of smiles. Actually, the Southern District's Dragonhorn Griffin Lion sent us an invitation not long ago, inviting us to participate in the upcoming Harvest Festival. This sentence attracted the attention of everyone present. Dragonhorn Griffin Lion? Letitia's beautiful face couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. So that's how it is. After careful calculation, the day of their Harvest Festival has indeed arrived. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but ask curiously. What? Is the community called Dragonhorn Griffin Lion very famous? Master, Dragonhorn Griffin Lion is not a community, but an alliance formed by 6 communities. Letitia explained. Their base is located in the outer gate of the Southern District, 775-9175. That is an area famous for its rich resources, especially water resources, crops and livestock. It is second to none among the 4 areas. Every year, there will be a variety of reward games with these rich resources as prizes for the Harvest Festival. Crops and livestock. Noah raised his eyebrows. Doesn't that mean this Harvest Festival is a great opportunity for us? Yes. Black Rabbit energetically replied. The Harvest Festival will be held in about half a month, and when we recover the land, we can win a lot of crops and livestock from this Harvest Festival. It really can't be better. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they all smiled. Indeed, it really couldn't be better. Noah also smiled without a trace. In that case, I don't need to spend so much effort. Chapter 1337. After the discussion about the Harvest Festival, everyone dispersed and went about their own business. Noah, on the other hand, returned to his room and began the long-awaited update of his ability value. Noah Dorielvi. For strength, SSS 1757, SSS 2000 durability, SSS 1758, SSS 2000 dexterity, SSS 1755, SSS 2000 agility, SSS 1760, SSS 2000 magic, SSS 1743, SSS 2000 mystery, GF magic, GF swordsman, GF magic weapon refining steel making magic duplicate, refine and forge weapons duplicate. Refine and forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent according to the level, performance and ability of the weapon. Duplicate, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a long time according to the level, performance and ability of the weapon. Protection of sword permanent magic permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the contracted spirit. contract spirit as a sword spirit, obtain the protection of the sword spirit, and weaken physical attacks on oneself. The degree of weakening will increase or decrease according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold smelting quick attack magic make the target gradually turn into steel. Successful tempering will crush it. Tempering speed will be determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills protection from the world permanent skill equal to luck events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. When the data of the ability value update was fed back to Noah's mind, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes were filled with excitement. It's finally time to level up. Yes, it's finally time to level up. When Noah's proficiency in omnipotence had reached 2,000 points, he would be qualified to level up. As long as he obtained enough experience points to be called a great achievement, then Noah could level up to LV5. LV5. That's not as simple as just leveling up. You know, in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, LV, for known as the second level adventurer, LV. Level 5 was known as the number 1 adventurer. It was upgraded to LV. With a level of 5, one would have the qualifications to be called an expert. And to level up to LV, Noah had already gathered 5 great achievements. He had defeated one of the strongest star elves, Argel. He defeated the demon king, Pest, who was a deity. This level of achievement was definitely enough to be called a great achievement. Now, all that's left is to choose how to develop my abilities. Developing abilities. This was a passive special ability that could be added to one's ability value whenever one's level increased. Of course, this didn't mean that he could obtain it every time he leveled up. Whether or not one could obtain the ability to develop depended entirely on one's accumulated experience points and the actions one had taken. For example, those who frequently forged weapons and armor would be able to develop the ability to smelt. For example, those who frequently concocted potions and medicines would be able to develop the ability of harmonization. If he didn't gain enough EXP, even if he leveled up, he wouldn't be able to develop his abilities. On the other hand, as long as he obtained a suitable amount of experience points, he would be able to choose from multiple abilities. This time, Noah was able to obtain a total of 3 abilities to develop. These 3 abilities were respectively Fist Punch, Shatter, and Abnormal Resistance. Among them, Fist Punch was an ability that could only be obtained by fighting barehanded for a period of time. The effect of this ability was very simple. It was to increase one's attack power during barehanded combat. It was likely that Noah had met the condition to obtain this ability after fighting with reverse 16 knights for a long period of time. As for Shatter, it was an ability that could only be obtained after going through large-scale destruction. Noah felt that the opportunity to obtain this ability should be due to his experience in the previous world when he used thunder to transform the entire Lien cult nation into ruins. The effect of this ability was also very simple. It could increase the destructive power of all of the user's attacks. As for Abnormal Resistance, it was an ability that could possibly be obtained after undergoing the baptism of negative powers such as poison and weakness to a certain extent. During the battle with Pest, Noah had indeed stayed in the vortex of the Black Death virus for quite some time. Thus, he was able to obtain this ability to resist abnormal states. Then which of the 3 abilities should he choose? First, I have to eliminate abnormal states. Since I have a physique that is immune to all negative powers, there is no need to add this ability, said Noah as though he was talking to himself. So should I choose between Fist Punch and Shatter? The former could increase one's attack power during barehanded combat. The latter could increase the destructive power of all attacks. Regardless of which one it was a very useful ability. However, if one were to ask which one Noah was more inclined to choose, then, Shatter, concluded Noah. I already have Swordsman, which can increase the attack power and defense of sword-type weapons. There is no need to increase the attack power of barehanded combat. Noah's combat style was rather varied. Among them, although he had barehanded combat, he was not proficient in it. In a situation where he really needed to go all out, he would not have the opportunity to use it. No matter what, Noah's attainments in bare-handed combat were only limited to some martial arts styles that he had learned in the world of the Black Bullet. It was not considered a high level at all. Noah's true skill lay in his swordsmanship. After all, compared to the martial arts that he had learned in the world of the Black Bullet, swordsmanship was a skill that Noah had honed for many years since he was young. In addition, he had also learned the ultimate sword skill. In terms of skills, Noah could only be said to have reached the acme of perfection in swordsmanship. Bare-handed combat only involved some martial arts. Even if he was not a layman, he was definitely not an expert. Therefore, in a situation where he already had the swordsman ability, there was no need to add the fist punch ability. On the other hand, shatter can increase the destructive power of any attack, including swordsmanship and weapons. I believe that even the attack method of using a large number of noble artifacts and the true name release of noble artifacts should be included, right? Therefore, Noah made his decision. Alright. It's decided then. After a while, Noah's new ability value status came out. Noah Dole LV. 5 Strength, SSS 2000, A865 Durability, SSS 2000, A877 Dexterity, SSS 2000, A880 Agility, SSS 2000, A888 Magic, SSS 2000, A866 Mystery, F Magic, F Swordsman, F Shatter. I Magic Weapon Refinement Steel Making Magic Copy Refine, and Forge Weapons Copy, Refine and Forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Copy, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a long time depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords Protection Permanent Magic Permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the Contract Spirit. Contract Spirit as a Sword Spirit. Obtain the protection of the Sword Spirit and weaken physical attacks on oneself. The degree of weakening will increase or decrease according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold Smelting Quick Attack Magic make the target gradually turn into steel. If the tempering is successful, it will be crushed. The tempering speed will be determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills Protection from the World Permanent skill equal to luck. Events that have a direct relationship with luck will eventually lead to the most favorable results. Clenching his fist, Noah felt the substantial improvement brought by the upgrade, and the corner of his mouth slowly raised. Chapter 1338. The outer door of Box 210-5380, the base of the community no name. Pung. Following the sound of a muffled explosion, in an open space some distance away from the no-name library, a burst of thick sand and dust rose into the air, floating towards the gradually darkening sky. A gentle breeze blew past, gradually carrying away the thick sand and dust that rose into the air, leaving a crater that looked like it was hit by a meteorite. And in the middle of this crater, Noah maintained his posture of punching the ground, slowly straightening his body. With slow movements, he slightly opened and closed his hands, feeling the strength flowing through his body. Noah nodded with great satisfaction. With my current physical ability, I reckon that I can easily suppress Hercules in the form of a servant, right? His ability value rose to LV. After reaching 5, Noah's strength, durability, dexterity, agility, and magic, a total of 5 basic abilities had a qualitative leap. In the past, Noah had estimated that if his ability value rose to LV, level 5, then he would be able to match Hercules in the form of a servant. Now it seems that at that time, Noah had somewhat underestimated himself. With Noah's current physical ability, not to mention matching Hercules, even suppressing him would be a piece of cake. If now Noah and Hercules were to use their full strength to punch each other, then the result would definitely be that Noah would not move an inch, and Hercules would be directly sent flying like a cannonball, right? This was also a matter of course. In the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, the people who received the grace bestowed by God, if they wanted to level up, not only must they have enough experience to call it a great achievement, they also needed to lay down a good foundation before leveling up. In simple terms, it was to raise all ability values to the level of D. Then they would have the qualifications to level up to the next level. and the proficiency of D was only 500. In other words, when the proficiency of all ability points reached 500, that person would be qualified to level up. At this time, as long as he could achieve enough EXP to level up, he would be able to do so. But for Noah, if he wanted to level up, he had to reach the limit of his ability value. According to the data compiled by the Pantheon in the past 1,000 years, the proficiency limit of the ability points could only reach 999, which was the S stage of the ability points. However, if Noah wanted to level up, he had to surpass this limit and reach the 2,000 proficiency points that could not be increased anymore, which was the SSS stage. This was a realm that no one could reach. Only Noah, who Hestia said had terrifying possibilities, could reach. Only by reaching this realm would Noah be qualified to level up. Every time I level up, the basic ability proficiency of the ability value will all return to 0. However, the basic ability of the previous level does not disappear. Instead, it is kept as a hidden ability, Noah muttered to himself. So after leveling up, even if all the basic abilities of the ability value decrease, the actual ability is much stronger than before. Now Noah was fully aware of this reality. Although all the ability points had decreased to the A stage, that was LV. A stage of level 5 was much stronger than LV. SSS stage of level 4 was much stronger. After all, since it was called leveling up, it had almost the same meaning as being reborn. If before I still needed to use enhanced magic to strengthen my physical ability, and then use Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet to increase my strength in order to fight with 16 knights, then now I definitely don't need to do that. Noah clenched one of his fists, his eyes shining brightly. Now that I have reached LV5 and all the ability points are at the A stage, I don't need to use Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet to increase my strength. I only need to use enhanced magic to strengthen my strength, and then I can match 16 knights' terrifying physical ability. This was LV4 and LV. The difference between 5. Of course, this difference only existed for Noah. From LV1 he leveled up to LV. At this stage of 5, every time Noah leveled up, he leveled up to the SSS stage of 2,000 ability points. Others, on the other hand, could only level up to the D stage of 500 ability points. Under such circumstances, according to the rules of leveling up, every time after leveling up, although the ability points and ability points would all return to 0, the ability points of the previous level would not disappear. Instead, it would be preserved as a hidden ability. Noah leveled up to the limit every time he leveled up, and the ability points of the previous level were preserved to this day. One could imagine how terrifying it was. Therefore, Noah could be sure that even if it was called Eulalia's ultimate weapon, the only LV7 Oda, it was not to this extent. Even if all other factors were removed, and Noah and Oda were assumed to be ordinary people with the same physical ability, then after going through several levels, the ability points of the ability points were raised to the SSS stage of 2,000 and above, and it was preserved as a hidden ability. Noah only needed to level up to LV, for he could level up to LV7 ability points comparable to Oda. Therefore, based purely on the ability points increase, he could level up to LV5. Noah undoubtedly surpassed Oda in all aspects. After leveling up, Noah had absolute confidence that he did not need to use the Scarlet Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet boosted gear to multiply his strength. He only needed to use the enhanced magic to strengthen himself, and then he would be able to match 16 knights' foul physical ability. As for the development of the fragmentation ability, currently it is only at the lowest stage of I, and the increase in destructive power is not obvious. Noah gradually grasped his current strength in all aspects. Moreover, the increase is only destructive power, and not offensive power. Even if the fragmentation stage is increased, it will not help in fighting. Thinking of this, Noah was actually somewhat eager to give it a try. Should I call that 16 Knights guy out to play? As long as he slightly provoked that problem child, 16 Knights would definitely happily jump out and have a fight with Noah, right? However, if it really comes to that point, I reckon that problem child will not give up until the victor is decided. If that was the case, Noah felt that it would be better if he did not look for trouble. Just as Noah was preparing to return to the main hall, a shocking aura flashed within the range of Noah's detection ability. Noah's footsteps slightly paused and he raised his head. His eyes flashed with traces of coldness, only because that fleeting aura was mixed with the same fleeting murderous aura. That murderous aura was completely targeted at Noah. Immediately, Noah closed his eyes, and then suddenly opened them. In a flash, he flew towards the horizon. Late at night, quiet. Faint moonlight sprinkled down from the horizon, bathing the entire, no-name, base that was like a wasteland. It looked somewhat desolate, but it also seemed exceptionally calm. In this extremely calm night, a black shadow suddenly flashed out. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and his body nimbly flew to the top of a dilapidated building. It was a person covered in a black robe. Raising his head, his bright eyes faintly revealed under the black robe. The black-robed person's gaze shot straight ahead. Shio! At that moment, a stream of light flew over from the horizon and landed on the top of a dilapidated building in front of the black-robed man. It also raised its head and looked coldly at the black-robed man who did not appear to be very tall. Two gazes suddenly collided in the night, and sparks flew. Chapter 1339. Without any reason, dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky, covering the stars and the moon in the sky, blocking all sources of light. Because the sovereignty of the stars was in the hands of the various Asura gods and Buddhas, such a situation rarely occurred in the night sky of the box court. Now the night sky was covered by thick dark clouds, causing the entire land under the night sky to be replaced by darkness. Under such circumstances, on the top of the dilapidated building, Noah and the black-robed man stood facing each other, looking at each other. Noah, who had outstanding sensing ability, could clearly feel that the black-robed man in front of him, who was not very tall, was definitely not an ordinary character. As for why, the reason was very simple. If he was just an ordinary character, then he definitely would not have such a strong sense of presence. That kind of sense of presence, as if he was destined to rule the world. Anyone who felt it would feel that the other party was not a simple character. And such an existence suddenly appeared in the base of No Name, and once released a targeted killing intent towards Noah. How could Noah not be serious? Of course Noah did not know. Just like how Noah could clearly feel that the black-robed man in front of him was not simple, the other party also intuitively felt that Noah was not simple. No. Rather than saying that he was not simple, it would be better to say that he was extremely terrifying. Because in the black-robed man's perception, Noah did not have his strange sense of presence, nor did he have anything special. It was as if he had integrated into the whole world, and felt that it was so natural. That posture only gave the black-robed man a feeling. That is, it was as if the whole world was standing on Noah's side. That kind of almost inconceivable feeling, until now, the black-robed man had never felt it from anyone. Even those Asura gods and Buddhas who were known as the strongest race in the box court. Under such a confrontation, the originally calm black-robed man was the first to be unable to maintain the stalemate. You are the human who defeated the Black Death Spot Demon King, right? Human? Noah narrowed his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile. In other words, you're not human, right? Who knows? Even I don't know what I am. The black-robed man said in a tone that sounded perfunctory but also serious. Compared to that, I'm actually more interested in knowing whether or not you're a threat to us. Oh, Noah said faintly. What if he does? The black-robed man's face, which was covered by the hood, slightly raised the corners of his mouth into a dangerous arc. Then I'll kill you. At this moment, the murderous aura that had been directed at Noah not long ago expanded from the black-robed man's body. The invisible murderous aura transformed into visible airwaves, blowing around like a gale. Then, like waves, it spread in all directions, causing Noah's robes to flutter. Noah's expression did not change in the slightest as he stood amidst the wave of killing intent. He cast his gaze towards the black-robed person, and suddenly smiled. You. That's right. The black-robed man smiled as well. Just me. As soon as he finished speaking, the dilapidated building under the black-robed man's feet cracked open. With a loud muffled explosion, the building under the black-robed man's feet directly cracked open, causing a shock wave. That was because the black-robed man had used an extremely powerful force to charge forward, causing a reaction force that was caused by the reaction force. As a result, the black-robed man's figure turned into a swift and violent cannonball, rubbing against the atmosphere. With a sharp piercing sound, he violently shot in the direction of Noah. That speed was almost comparable to the speed of the third universe. The distance between Noah and the black-robed man was less than 100 meters. With such a terrifying speed, the black-robed man would need less than a blink of an eye to fly in front of Noah. However, at the same time that the black-robed man turned into a cannonball and shot towards Noah, a wave-like golden ripple fluctuated out from Noah's surroundings and surrounded Noah. At this moment, the black-robed man who had turned into a swift and violent cannonball just happened to flash in front of Noah, and was also surrounded by the wave-like golden ripples. The black-robed man immediately became vigilant. Without any hesitation, he stomped on the ground and quickly retreated. It was also at this moment that silver chains with resplendent golden light burst out from the wave-like golden ripples and crisscrossed the space around Noah. Just now, if the black-robed man did not choose to retreat, then he would have been bound by the heaven-lock Enkidu. However, Noah was not the kind of person who would passively endure the attacks of others. Looking at the black-robed man who did not hesitate to retreat, Noah's eyes flashed and he raised a hand. In the next moment, the wave-like golden ripples once again fluctuated in the space around Noah. Inside, a variety of treasured tools such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on came out. They trembled and transformed into an aurora. It seemed as if a streak of resplendent golden streamer had blotted out the sky and violently shot towards the direction of the black-robed man. However, in the next moment, Noah was finally shocked. Clang, 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 clang. Along with the crisp sound of steel colliding with steel, the treasures turned into streaks of light one by one. The treasures that had left behind glorious achievements and great reputations in various myths and legends were all bounced off one by one. Of course, if the black-robed man had used his fists or other methods to deflect the rain of relic like 16 nights in reverse, Noah would not have been so surprised. There was only one reason why Noah was shocked. That was, the precious artifacts that could pierce through any living being were all repelled by the black-robed man, as if they had collided with steel when the black-robed man didn't dodge at all. Yes, they were not blocked, but when they landed on the black-robed man's body, they were bounced off. It was not that Noah had not seen the same situation before. In the past, during the Holy Grail War in the Planet of the Moon, Gilgamesh and Hercules' battle had also shown the same scene. This was because Hercules' treasures were able to nullify any attacks below grade A. When Gilgamesh used treasures below grade A to attack, they were all bounced off by Hercules' body. Now the black-robed man was in the same situation. He did not dodge, nor did he dodge. It was as if he knew from the beginning that Noah's treasures were ineffective against him. He used his body to bounce off the treasure's rain. At that moment, Noah's eyes flashed with a sharp light that in the fluctuation of magic, there was a flickering fluorescence. Lines like electric wires spread on Noah's hands and feet, strengthening Noah's arm and leg strength. At that moment, Noah gained strength and speed that was not inferior to 16 knights. Dong! In the muffled explosion, Noah fiercely stomped on the ground. At the same time, a part of the dilapidated building was directly crushed. His body was like a bullet, carrying the whistling sound of the wind, and swept in front of the black-robed man who was retreating. His dark and deep eyes that were flickering with a sharp light met with his slightly constricted pupils. Then, both sides moved at the same time. Bang! The fist that was enough to shake up a violent shock wave landed on an arm that was raised up, causing a circle of terrifying wind waves to spread to the surroundings. The black-robed man who crossed his arms in front of his body and blocked the terrifying punch only felt an unparalleled force crazily hit his body. Immediately, the black-robed man flew out. Like a meteorite falling from the sky, in the sharp sound of a whoosh, he heavily hit the ground not far from the dilapidated building. Bang! Along with the loud roar, the black-robed man directly smashed the ground, causing the ground to sink, creating a deep pit with a diameter of more than 100 meters. Needless to say, Noah was quite lucky. Why? Because just today, he had just leveled up and allowed his strength to take a step forward. Someone sent himself to be Noah's sandbag, helping Noah to test his strength. Could it be that this was not considered lucky? Chapter 1340. Rumble. The dilapidated building collapsed with a loud bang, raising a thick cloud of sand and dust. It was completely turned into ruins. The reason why it collapsed was because of the 2 attacks from Noah and the black-robed man, which caused the building itself to crack. It was only 2 attacks, but the building directly collapsed. Although part of the reason was that the building was already quite dilapidated, the main reason was that the impact caused by the 2 charges of Noah and the black-robed man caused the building itself to collapse. After passing through LV, Noah was at level 5, and his all-ability value was at the A stage. After being strengthened by enhanced magic, it was not surprising that Noah could achieve this result. However, the black-robed man who came out of nowhere also had such a terrifying physical ability, which was really surprising. And this also proved that the black-robed man was definitely not an ordinary person. Or rather, to be able to use his body to directly bounce off a noble artifact. It was enough to prove that the black-robed man was not an ordinary person. Landing in front of the huge hole, Noah waved his hand, raising a gust of wind, which blew away all the sand and dust from the hole, revealing the situation inside. In the center of the hole, the black-robed man slowly stood up, patted off the gravel and dust on his body, and then looked at Noah. Although there was no way to see the face covered by the black hood, Noah could feel it. The other party's gaze on him had already changed. To be able to suppress me like this, I didn't think that there would be such a talent in no name. The black-robed man muttered as if talking to himself. In the beginning, I heard that there was a member in this community who had thousands of divine deity-grade weapons that defeated the demon Star Spirit. I didn't really believe it, until the news of Black Death Spot Demon King being defeated by the same person reached my ears. Then I thought of meeting this person a little bit, to see the truth. The weapons that were shot at me just now did indeed have the aura of a divine deity. The black-robed man laughed and shrugged. It seems that I have no choice but to believe you. Does it matter to you whether I believe it or not? Noah looked directly at the black-robed man. In any case, as long as it's a weapon, it's useless against you, right? Oh, the black-robed man was surprised. Did you see through it? Is it that hard to see through? Noah curled his lips. I used weapons to launch a barrage of attacks at you, but I couldn't even cause you the slightest bit of damage. Instead, I was able to easily send you flying with a single punch. In that case, it shouldn't be difficult to guess that you have a gift that can nullify the attacks of weapons, right? I feel that there shouldn't be anyone who can easily send me flying with a single punch in this box with less than 4 digits. The black-robed man said, but he didn't hide the fact that he agreed with Noah's reasoning. However, you're right. This body does indeed possess the blessing of invulnerability. Even a Godhead-bestowed weapon wouldn't be able to penetrate this body. Invulnerability. Noah looked at the black-robed man meaningfully. So that's how it is. No wonder you needed to avoid the heaven lock, Enkidu. At the beginning. It's because it's not a weapon used to attack, but a weapon used to bind you. This type of weapon should still be effective against you, right? Maybe. After all, the Black Death Spot Demon King couldn't hide from the heaven lock, Enkidu. Naturally, I can't ignore the legendary level chain. The black-robed man said helplessly. Although it's not what I want, this body does have divinity. For me, I still have to be a little wary of that chain. Then, it's about time to reveal your identity, right? Noah sneered. Although it's not a secret, to be able to know that I possess thousands of Godhead-ranked weapons, use it to defeat the demon Star Spirit, and know about the existence of the Heaven Lock, Enkidu. It's obvious that you know the details of my battle with the Black Death Spot Demon King. It's impossible that you don't have any power behind you, right? That kind of thing isn't important anymore. The black-robed man smiled as if he didn't answer the question. I only need to know that you are indeed a difficult person to deal with. That's enough. After saying that, without giving Noah a chance to speak, the black-robed man muttered to himself. However, I originally thought that even if you really possess thousands of Godhead-ranked weapons, for me who is invulnerable, as long as I pay attention to the existence of the Heaven Lock, Enkidu. You shouldn't be a threat. But now, it seems that even without those Godhead-ranked weapons, you aren't an existence that can be dealt with casually. To be able to easily send me flying with a punch, that proves that at least on the surface, I'm not your opponent. If I really want to kill you, I can't do it without taking out my real trump card. The black-robed man muttered. But if I take out my trump card here, it's a bit stupid. Not to mention that the Demon King of White Knight is in this outer area. If I take out that kind of trump card, it will only attract the strongest star spirit. It's a bit of a miscalculation. Seeing that the black-robed man began to calculate the strength of both sides, Noah's eyes became colder and colder. Although he didn't know what kind of trump card this black-robed man was hiding, the fact that the black-robed man didn't care about Noah's existence and began to calculate his own gains and losses, it was obvious that he thought that as long as he took out his trump card, he would definitely be able to kill Noah. That extremely confident attitude made Noah suddenly laugh. I see you can't take out your trump card? After saying such a sentence, a burst of violent magic rose from Noah's body and turned into a gust of wind, blowing in all directions. Since you don't plan to take out your trump card, then try mine. As soon as his voice fell, a solemn voice resounded throughout the entire space. For victory, quickly come before me. Immortal Sun, please bestow upon me a shining steed, a spirited steed. Bring me the light will that symbolizes your Lord. At this moment, in Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate that was connected to the 10 patterns, one of the patterns suddenly lit up. Then the sky lit up. Yes, it lit up. As if all the darkness between heaven and earth was expelled, an extremely dazzling sun parted the clouds and appeared in the sky, illuminating the entire night sky. At this moment, all the residents of the outer gate of 210-5380 rushed out of the buildings one after another. Looking at the sky that was suddenly as bright as day and the sun that suddenly appeared, they fell into a clamor. Summon the sun? The black-robed man's face finally changed abruptly. Could it be that you have the sovereignty of the sun? The sovereignty of the sun. It was the same principle as the sovereignty of the demonic star that Luos once controlled, and could summon the star spirit of the demonic star. That was the sovereignty of the sun. However, it was different from the demonic star. Because the sun was extremely important, and had a very special status among all the stars, its sovereignty was not only one, but was divided into 24. These 24 sovereignty of the sun were divided into the following 24 types according to the celestial divisions of the 12 zodiac and the 12 equatorial stars. The 12 sovereignty of the 12 zodiac were divided into Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, a total of 12. The 12 sovereignty of the 12 equatorial stars were divided into rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, chicken, dog, and pig, a total of 12. There were a total of 24 sovereignty of the sun, each of which allowed the holder to summon the star beast corresponding to the sovereignty of the sun. Now the miracle that Noah displayed was almost exactly the same as the scene of the holder of the sovereignty of the sun summoning star beasts. However, the next scene made the black-robed man completely dispel this idea. That was because, within the sun that illuminated the entire horizon, a majestic white horse had quietly appeared. Neigh, the extremely loud neigh of the horse reverberated. Chapter 1341. Neigh. The horse's neigh that resounded through the sky seemed to be able to spread to any corner of the world, turning into an echo that continuously reverberated in the air. Everyone in the outer door of 210-5380 looked at the divine white horse that appeared from the dazzling sun in the sky. All of them fell into a daze. As for the black-robed man, he calmed down instead. No, that's not the sun's sovereignty. In the beginning, the black-robed man thought that Noah held the sun's sovereignty of the horse among the 12 equatorial stars. Now, it seemed that the power Noah used was not the sun's sovereignty at all. After all, the sun's sovereignty of the horse is in the hands of the White Knight King. The black-robed man stared at the white horse in the center of the dazzling sun in the sky. What's more, although that white horse has the power of the sun, It is not the star beast of the sun's sovereignty. That's right. The white horse that appeared in the eyes of the black-robed man was not a star beast, but a pure collection of the sun's power. In other words, although it looked like a divine white horse, the body of the divine white horse that appeared in the center of the dazzling sun was only a collection of the sun's fire, not a living body. It had no life nor consciousness. It was just a flame from the sun that appeared in the shape of a horse. Even so, the flame from the sun was enough to burn the black-robed man's body in an instant. It only needed an instant. Noah, who stood in front of the huge pit, stared at the black-robed man with emotionless eyes as if the dazzling sun with the majestic white horse in the center was in the background. He slowly raised his hand. Fall. Although the voice was extremely soft, it clearly entered the ears of the black-robed man. The black-robed man finally could not help but shout. Wait. Do you want to shatter the curtain of the box court? This sentence caused Noah's hand that was about to fall to the ground to freeze in mid-air. It wasn't until this moment that Noah remembered. Above the box court, there was a curtain that could dilute the sun's light, allowing vampires and other nocturnal creatures to live in the box court during the day. If the flames from the sun fell from the sky, it would definitely shatter the curtain above the courtyard. At that time, Letitia and the other nocturnal creatures would no longer be able to continue living in the city during the day. Teasy. Noah couldn't help but click his tongue, and the mana in his body gradually began to converge. In the sky, at the center of the sun that illuminated the entire world, the majestic white horse turned into a burst of resplendent golden flames and merged into the sun, disappearing without a trace. However, the dazzling sun still didn't disappear, making the world as bright as day. Under these circumstances, the black-robed man had ample reason to believe. If they made Noah unhappy, the sun in the sky would still fall. We really miscalculated, the black-robed man said in a low voice, feeling heavy from the bottom of his heart. Other than the thousands of Godhead bestowment weapons, this guy can also use the power of the sun? It was just like what Noah felt. Before this, the black-robed man had never thought that he would lose to Noah. The reason was just as the black-robed man had said. He still had a hidden trump card. However, the black-robed man had obviously forgotten one thing. In this world, he wasn't the only one who could hide his strength. If he could have a trump card, others could also have a trump card. Even this white horse incarnation that showed the power of the sun was only a part of Noah's trump card. Make your choice. Noah coldly looked at the black-robed man. Are you going to take off the black robe yourself? Or am I going to take off that eyesore of a black robe? Hearing this, the black-robed man was silent for a moment, and then suddenly smiled. What? Do you really want to know my true identity? Saying such a sentence, the black-robed man opened his hand and declared. But don't worry, now is not the time to let you know. Since you have such power, we will meet sooner or later. Even if you and I don't want to, it will be the same. After saying this, the black-robed man clapped his hands. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared beside the black-robed man. It was also a black-robed man. Seeing this, Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. Before this, Noah did not notice any signs of someone approaching. Under such circumstances, the black-robed man who suddenly appeared beside the black-robed man, who was shorter than the former, spoke with a playful and dissatisfied voice. Now are you satisfied? It was a girl's voice. Moreover, it was a very young girl's voice. Obviously, this black-robed man who suddenly appeared was a young girl. Facing the dissatisfaction of the young girl who was also wrapped in a black robe, the black-robed man bitterly laughed. Satisfied? Of course I'm satisfied. At least, we know that outside of the plan, there is someone who has enough power to affect our plan, right? Well, that's true. The young girl's voice revealed a trace of cheerfulness. If that's the case, then our trip here is not in vain. That's right, this person is indeed a considerable threat to us. The black-robed man said bluntly. It's a pity that we can't do anything to him now. The young girl nodded her head in agreement. Then she turned around and looked at Noah. She asked in a somewhat naive and provocative manner. Little big brother, you're the one who solved Little Pest's game, right? May I ask how long did you use to solve it? I only used 5 days to solve it. From the young girl's voice, Noah was able to tell that she was very satisfied with this result. Unfortunately, the young girl asked the wrong person. 5 days. Noah said indifferently. I used 5 hours. The young girl was immediately speechless. Ha 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 ha. The black-robed man immediately laughed loudly. It would appear that it is not only strength. This time, even the opponent's intelligence is extraordinary. Humph. The young girl glared at Noah in an unconvinced manner. So what? The real battle has only just begun. After saying those words, the young girl placed her hand on the black-robed man's shoulder. The black-robed man stared closely at Noah, as if he was trying to remember Noah's appearance. He left behind such a sentence. We will meet again sooner or later. You are an existence outside of the plan. After leaving behind such a sentence, the 2 black-robed men disappeared from their original positions at the same time. The entire place suddenly became silent. Looking at the place where the 2 black-robed men disappeared from, Noah did not speak for a long time. Only after a long while did he mutter, "Is it the gift of space jumping? How interesting." Following Noah's mutter, the sun in the sky slowly retracted its dazzling light and gradually disappeared, allowing darkness to once again descend upon the earth. The daytime sky returned to its nighttime state. However, the thick layer of dark clouds also disappeared. Then Noah heard it. All sorts of footsteps could be heard approaching them. In the No Name Library's chat room, Bayasha glared at Noah with an unhappy expression. What is going on? It was not just Bayasha. 16 Knights Reversal, Jiyuan Flying Bird, Haruhito Masaaki, Black Rabbit, Letitia, Run, and even Lily were all present. At the same time, they cast their gazes on Noah, their eyes full of questions. In this regard, Noah just said with an innocent expression, "What do you mean, what is going on? Are you still trying to pretend?" Bayasha's expression became more and more unhappy. That sun was your doing, right? The sun. Noah scratched his cheek and laughed. Why are you so sure that I was the one who did it? Nonsense, in this 2105380 outer gate. I can't think of anyone else who can use such a powerful sun's power other than you. Bayasha frowned. So, don't tell me it wasn't you. Thanks to you, in order to appease those frightened residents, I took the blame. Wasn't that right? In order to reassure the residents of the outer gate, Bayasha took the blame for the sun appearing at night to himself. After all, Bayasha was the star spirit of the sun. For Bayasha to be the scapegoat, it was the most suitable choice. Of course, if one were to say that they were not happy, there would definitely be some. Chapter 1342. Knowing that White Yiksha had taken the blame for him, Noah was startled at first, then he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, that was something that couldn't be helped. Undoubtedly 1 second ago, it was still the middle of the night, and the next second, the entire sky was bright. It was as if after midnight, not only was the sky not dark, but it suddenly became as bright as noon. No matter who it was, they would feel panic. And this kind of panic was even greater in the courtyard with all kinds of asuras. After all, no one knew if an existence like the sun god suddenly went crazy and wanted to burn the entire outer sect of 2105380 with the flames from the sun. And if a demon king who controlled the power of the sun suddenly attacked, it would be even worse. Therefore, when Noah used the incarnation of the white horse to turn the entire night into day, the panic caused in that instant almost caused the residents of the outer sect of 2105380 to flee in panic. If White Yiksha hadn't appeared in time to suppress the panic and take the blame for it, the outer sect area would have been in chaos. In this regard, Noah could only frankly surrender. Sorry, because I was looked down on. I got too excited and accidentally went overboard. In fact, after the incident, Noah was more or less afraid. If the black-robed man hadn't blurted out a reminder to protect himself, Noah might have really used the white horse to break the curtain above the courtyard and cause a huge disaster. Don't forget, Noah's authority was fused with the limit ability. When not used, he could enter a state of self-enhancement. And when he used it, because the God-Slayer had the characteristic of becoming stronger the more he fought, Noah's authority could also become stronger in battle. In other words, whether Noah used his authority or not, his authority could continue to become stronger. However, compared to the self-enhancement when not used, Noah's authority would increase faster in battle. Therefore, Noah hoped that Gaia and Aleia would choose a higher-level world for him, so that he could throw himself into a battle where he could use his authority and quickly increase the power of his authority. Unfortunately, it had only been a month since he came to the courtyard. Other than White Yiksha, Noah hadn't met an opponent who was worthy of him using his authority as his trump card. Even so, Noah's authority was still growing stronger. Under such circumstances, it had been about a year since Noah obtained authority in the world of the God-Slayer. After such a long period of continuous strengthening, Noah's authority was much stronger than when he first obtained it. If that was the case, if he had really used the incarnation of the white horse to attack the black-robed man, not only the curtains of Hakata, even the base of No Name, would have been burnt to a crisp, right? This was also under the condition that Noah didn't use divine power that could greatly increase the power of authority, but only magic power. One could imagine what kind of disaster it would be for the outer gate of 210-5380 if Noah really lost his mind in anger. In the world of the God-Slayer, the reason why the relevant people in the magic world were so afraid of the God-Slayer and worshipped him as the Demon King was because they were worried that once he was in a bad mood, he would casually vent his anger and cause a great disaster. When he thought about how he had almost unintentionally done the same thing as Warban, Luo Hao, and Tony, and how he was worthy of the name of the Demon King, Noah felt terrible. It was unknown if he had seen something from Noah's expression, but White Yiksha's face eased a little, and he waved the paper fan in his hand. Forget it, no matter what, you didn't really make the sun set. Otherwise, if the outer gate area of the East District that I am in charge of was burned to ashes under the power of the sun, then no matter if it was the ruler of the East District or the star spirit of the sun, I would lose all my face, right? How about you have a little self-control, little brother? 16 Nights Reversal also interrupted. Moreover, it's fine to make the sun set, but why didn't you ask me to do such a fun thing? Jiuyu and Heruai Buyao said at the same time. That's right. That's right. You guys. It was unknown when Black Rabbit had a paper fan in his hand, but with 3 crisp sounds he slapped 16 Nights Reversal, Jiuyu, and Heruai Buyao on the heads of the 3 problem children. You idiot adults, that's enough. This is not something that can be described as fun, Letitia said with dissatisfaction. Letitia also said with some dissatisfaction. She looked at Noah with eyes full of blame. My master, you are the same. Please consider what kind of disaster overusing your power will bring to the surroundings, okay? Okay. I will be careful next time. Noah shook his head with a wry smile, then pulled himself together and looked at White Yiksha. By the way, White Yiksha, I have something to ask you. What? White Yiksha looked at Noah in annoyance. Are you trying to find trouble for me again? I just have some questions I want to ask you. Don't be so vigilant. Noah sighed, then became serious and looked straight at White Yiksha. Do you know who in the box court can use the gift of invulnerability? The gift of invulnerability. White Yiksha was slightly startled and asked in confusion. Why do you ask? Well, I just have something I want to study. Noah brushed him off. Help me think. See if there's anyone who can use the gift of invulnerability. The gift of invulnerability. White Yiksha looked at Noah suspiciously at first. When he saw that Noah's expression was very serious, he sighed slightly and began to think. If you are referring to the gift of invulnerability, I do know some people who can use it. There are even quite a few small fries. It's not the kind of gift that ordinary weapons can't cut. Noah corrected him. It's the gift of invulnerability that can even completely block a Godhead gift armament. An invulnerable blessing that can even completely block a Godhead grade blessing. White Yiksha's brows furrowed tightly. If that's the case, the first person I can think of is the predecessor of No Name, a member of this community when it was still at its peak. A former member of this community. Noah was stunned. At this time, Letitia couldn't help but speak. White Yiksha, are you talking about Ritian Lion? Ritian Lion? Noah looked at Letitia. Letitia, Is the Retian lion you speak of the person who has the gift of invulnerability? To be precise, Retian lion isn't a person, but a divine beast that drives the sun god war chariot. Letitia explained. Furthermore, Retian lion doesn't have the gift of invulnerability. That invulnerability power is only the power obtained after the Leo constellation's sun sovereign was strengthened. Leo constellation's sun sovereign. Noah was finally shocked. In other words, this community used to have a member who had the sun sovereign? Yes, Master Noah. Letitia nodded, then bit her lip. However, in the attack of the Demon King 3 years ago, the Retian lion who had the Leo constellation's sun sovereign should have been captured by the enemy Demon King like me. The Leo constellation's sun sovereign should have fallen into the hands of the enemy, right? If it's the Retian lion who has the Leo constellation's sun sovereign and has been strengthened by the sun sovereign, then even a godhead gift armament can be repelled, right? White Yiksha said with a sigh. That kind of sun sovereign falling into the hands of a demon king is really a situation that doesn't make people happy. Is that so? Noah immediately fell into deep thought. Sun sovereign? Looking at Noah, who was completely lost in thought, White Yiksha narrowed his eyes slightly. Immediately, he also fell into deep thought. Chapter 1343. In the end, although he had a discussion with White Yiksha about the gift of invulnerability and the sovereignty of the sun, Noah did not tell White Yiksha about the black-robed man. Wasn't that to be expected? Although the other party had directly targeted Noah, his true face and purpose were completely unknown. If it was just an attack on Noah, it wouldn't be a crime in this box where there were existences that surpassed human intelligence everywhere, right? Just because someone was picking on him, Noah could not bring himself to complain to the person who dominated his social class. This was equivalent to looking for the teacher when he was bullied by his classmates. Therefore, in the end, this matter was left unsettled. Regarding this, although White Yiksha couldn't let it go, he couldn't continue to question him, and could only leave helplessly. As for No Name's companions, they questioned Noah about this matter, but Noah, who didn't have any clues, still perfunctorily brushed them off, causing them to scatter with dissatisfaction. After dealing with those troublesome problem children, Noah returned to his room. After placing Aster, who had transformed into a small sword, on the bed, Noah directly laid down and closed his eyes as various thoughts flashed through his mind. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Immediately after, a voice that was light and tender but also faintly carried a sense of maturity rang out. Master Noah, are you asleep? Letitia? Noah came back to his senses, but he didn't get up or turn around. He maintained the appearance of closing his eyes and pretending to be asleep as he spoke leisurely. Come in. As soon as he finished speaking, the door to Noah's room was directly opened. Letitia, who was wearing a cute and petite maid uniform, walked in from outside the door. As Noah's personal maid, Letitia usually entered Noah's room. However, in the past, Letitia had always used the excuse of serving Noah to enter Noah's room. But today, Letitia was obviously not here to serve Noah. That young but rather cute face was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Noah seemed to have noticed that Letitia's atmosphere was a little different from before. He opened his eyes and looked at Letitia. What happened? Letitia met Noah's gaze. After hesitating for a while, she said so. Is Master still thinking about the sovereignty of the Leo constellation's sun? To be precise, you should be thinking about the gift of invulnerability, right? Noah corrected. After all, it's not only the Leo constellation's sun sovereignty that can strengthen one's body to become invulnerable, right? That is indeed the case. In the box court, there are many blessings that can grant immunity to weapons, and it is not limited to the Leo constellation's sun sovereignty. Letitia said seriously. However, to be able to repel the thousands of Godhead-grade bestowment weapons that Master possesses, the first thing that people would think of is the Leo constellation's sun sovereignty. So, that's why White Yiksha was the first to mention it. Noah said with a sigh. I did not think that in the past, this community actually had a member who held the sun sovereignty. Regardless of which world it was, the existence of the sun was necessary. Even in this box court, among the top Asura gods and Buddhas, There were many divine spirits and star spirits that had deep connections with the sun. There were even many pure-blooded dragon species, and the 3 strongest races. Under such circumstances, the sun's sovereignty that represented the most Asura gods and Buddhas with the most important position would be divided into 24 portions. And Noah had heard that even as the astral spirit of the sun, the demon king who once represented the Saism to dominate all the universes and became the center of all cosmology, White Yiksha only held sovereignty over 14 of the suns. As for the other 10 sun sovereigns, 6 of them were held by someone who similarly had the deepest connection to the sun. She was a 3-digit number, but was an exceptional existence, able to stand on equal footing with the White Yiksha, someone who was respectfully called a queen by others. In other words, there were only 4 suns' sovereignty left for the world to fight over. In this world where gods and Buddhas walked everywhere, and divine beasts were as numerous as dogs, to be able to stand out and hold one of the remaining 4 suns' sovereignty, one could imagine how difficult it was to think about it. No name actually had such an existence in its heyday. Should it be said that it was truly worthy of being the largest community in the East District in the past? However, Letitia was silent for a while. After a while, she suddenly spoke. "Master, you're wrong." Noah was instantly stunned. Under Noah's stunned expression, Letitia spoke faintly. In this community, there was more than one member who held the sun sovereignty. As the former leader of the Box Court Knights, I also held the sun sovereignty. What? Noah stood up abruptly and looked at Letitia in surprise. "You also have the sun sovereignty?" "Yes." Letitia looked at Noah. "Master should have more or less heard about me, right?" Noah nodded. Letitia de Cray. This was Letitia's full name. As mentioned before, Letitia was a purebred vampire. Not only did she have godhood, but she also once wreaked havoc in the Box Court as the Demon King before finally becoming a member of this community. Before that, before Letitia became the Demon King, she had a reputation that was even wider than the Demon King. In the Box Court, vampires were called the Box Court Knights. In order to protect the only Box Court city that could move under the sun, they had always played the role of the guardians of order. At that time, the hierarchy system had not yet appeared. Therefore, the people who maintained the order and security of the Box Court were the vampires called the Box Court Knights. Letitia was the rightful heir to the throne of this race. At that time, it was me who led the Hakata Knights to protect this Hakata city. Later on, we established a hierarchy system to protect the lower class. Letitia narrated with a tranquil expression. Therefore, very few people know that in fact, when there is only one person left to protect the lower levels of order, that person will be given a temporary 4-digit position, and one of the sun sovereigns, becoming the full hierarchy ruler. One of the sun sovereigns and a temporary 4-digit position? Noah said with some uncertainty. In other words, Letitia, as the leader of the Box Court Knights who established the hierarchy ruler system. The first hierarchy ruler in history is you? Similarly, under such circumstances, I also became the first full hierarchy ruler in history. In order to recognize this achievement, the 25th sun sovereign, Ophiuchus, is my possession. The expression on Letitia's face became a little sad. However, there was internal strife among the vampires. The cause was because of the sun sovereign of Ophiuchus. Within the vampires, there was a portion of them who wanted to control the sun sovereign that had been tormenting them for a long time. When Letitia went to defeat the Demon King, they launched an internal strife. In that internal strife, Letitia's family, friends, and subordinates all died. In order to seek revenge, in that internal strife, I fell to become the Demon King and put an end to the war. Letitia laughed self-deprecatingly. Now that I think about it, as the former guardian of order, the protector of the Box Court, for the sake of revenge, he actually degenerated into an existence that he had always destroyed and defeated in the past. There really is nothing more ironic than this. And then? Noah was silent for a while, then asked softly. Then, the predecessor of this community defeated you, who had become the Demon King, and made you a subordinate, right? Actually, it's not right to say that I was defeated. The game I held was just sealed. Letitia shook her head. The former members of this community achieved the condition of indefinitely suspending my game, and cut me off from the game itself, sealing the Demon King game. Since then, I have joined this community. Is that so? Noah sighed and couldn't help but reach out his hand and gently touch Letitia's head. It's been hard on you. This sentence made Letitia's heart inexplicably sour, but at the same time, a warm current flowed through her. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.